Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of There's Still Time, the AFTN Soccer Show. We're doing a live YouTube post-game show, our second of the week. This is also going to make up the first three parts of this week's podcast. So there'll be more for the podcast as well, so you still have to listen to the podcast as well as this. We've got a packed show, and we've got a full house of guests. I'm Michael McCall.
I'm Steve Pander.
I'm Zachary Adam Eisenhower.
And I am Stephen Agen.
So I've got some fun props. My lighting isn't great, my connection isn't great, so I'm not crystal clear, but I'll show you what I do have. Naturally, there is a packet of chocolate digestives. Got to have that ready to go. And I feel after that performance I need a lot of sweet treats, so I've got some Tunnix tea cakes as well. And I thought it's after 10 o'clock, it's after dark, so let's not bother with being PC and drown our sorrows with my last Whitecaps beer that the Whitecaps sent me. So we'll crack this open, we'll get drunk, anything goes now. Yeah, I don't.
Well, the season's over. You might as well crack the last one.
Michael, the Whitecaps didn't gut the fish, but tonight I'll be eating some fish.
Excellent. And Stephen, I was so looking forward to introducing this as the Seattle Sounders end of season special. It doesn't look like that's happening, but have you brought any special treats with you to share?
Oh, let's see here, Michael. I have a Rainier with me to celebrate 3 points in the Emerald City. Finally,
Cheers.
Seattle on the board in Orlando. Cheers. Woke up at 6 a.m. the other day to watch them lose to Chicago on two abysmal defensive errors. And I have to tell you,
that's on Thursday.
That's a horrible start to your day, man. Just, I swear, anything's better than that. Wake me up with a bee sting first. Just anything.
And my little treat for everybody is that I put together a little video of Whitecaps scoring against Sounders in games that they actually got a result in.
Oh,
so this
fantastic.
This goes all the way back to Hasley.
I thought it was going to be a different kind of video that was coming up there. Oh,
no.
Oh, we can do our
so you can just
this.
You can just keep watching this. Watching this as it goes on, so it'll be about a 6-minute video. It'll go back and forth. So we can continue with the talk of this game, I guess.
No, I'm fine just to sit and watch this. It's better than talking about the game, if we're being totally honest. But I guess we are here to talk about the game. So let's start by just saying where the land lies right now for the Whitecaps, which is very unsteady. They're bottom of Group B. They've got a goal difference now of -4. They've got 0 points. But thanks to the wonderful San Jose Earthquakes and that strange 2-0 victory that they had earlier tonight, the Whitecaps are still alive. To quote, I know that you guys are big Star Trek fans because you're always talking about Star Trek. There's life, Jim, but not as we know it. Or not much of it anyway. They need a big swing in the last game against Chicago, so we'll talk about that. But, I mean, first of all, let's just go around the room. We'll start with our guest, Stephen. If you were marking the Whitecaps on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give their chances of making it out of this group and being in the knockout rounds?
Oh boy, out of 10, 2. I'm gonna have to give it a 2. It takes a goal on a set piece and just absolute perfect play at the back and a real tight 1-0 win against Chicago, and then a lot of help, right?
No, they can't even do that. They can't do that with a 1-0 win. They have to win by 2.
1-0 isn't good enough.
Yeah, they need at least
They have
2 to overtake
Yeah.
Chicago.
Is it 2? So tougher yet. Maybe it's down to a 1 then. It's just, I think they have to do it on set pieces probably. I just don't think there's a lot happening from open play. And unless something really wacky happens, it's going to take just a stellar defensive performance to even have a shot.
And you got to look at it too that the Chicago, they've had a great performance against Seattle, but not obviously didn't get the result today. How are they going to be? It's the 3rd game in, but they're kind of used to playing, I guess, now in the morning. Did they play? Yeah, they played against
one
Seattle.
game in the morning, yeah.
Yeah. So they're kind of used to that, so they have an idea of what's going on, whereas Vancouver, it's going to be their first time in the morning, and that'll be totally different.
I was just surprised that Steven said 2 out of 10 chance. I thought that was like crazy high, like really optimistic that, there's no way that they're beating Chicago by 2 or more and getting one of the 3rd place spots.
Especially with the injuries.
Yes, well.
The new injury.
But we'll come to some of that. We'll come to the Chicago game as well when we delve into things a little bit later. If we look at the group, though, I mean, did anyone fancy San Jose to go through, never mind actually win it?
I could have seen them going through, but topping, no.
I thought because they didn't have very many changes, I think, over from the year before. So they're a team that probably has the least amount of changes. And the fact that I didn't know this beforehand, but I didn't realize they had gone in there like 2 weeks before. And that's a huge advantage to being there 2 weeks before everybody else or most teams.
Their core is significantly better than it's been in years past, I think, or as they've evolved under Almeida. Judson's a really solid player. Ewell had a great game today. I think Alanis really holds the whole thing together for him, and they've got a few solid attacking pieces with Vako and Huson. And then, of course, Wando's still Wando, right? And when you put it all together, it's so much more coherent than it's been before. And Almeida, he really is top class, isn't he? And I think just having his direction on everything has been so important for them. And now they're getting the results from it. But I certainly didn't pick it myself.
I do miss his hair. I don't think he looks the same with that short hair. But let's talk about Wando, the man with the oversized jersey. A minute coming on the pitch, putting the ball in the back of the net. I mean, that's a luxury super sub I think every team in MLS would love to have. But what a guy. It's just fantastic stuff.
Yeah, he's our Freddie Montero, essentially.
Yeah, that's what Freddie could have been for us, Stephen, in this tournament if he'd made the trip. That's what I was hoping for. But, I mean, Wando, he just doesn't show any signs of like easing up, really, does he? He has 5 goals in 2 games against Chicago now.
And I found this out in the last game that he was available in 2 expansion drafts. And I had no idea that was the case. That's amazing that nobody decided to pick him up.
You a big Wando fan, Stephen?
I mean, he has just torched Cascadia for so many over the years. I can't even count how many tweets I've put out recounting his goals. It's constant, it's been an omnipresent fixture in MLS from the time that I started watching the league until now. And I think it annoyed me for a long time. And as I've gotten older, I've just come to appreciate how great he is and what he adds to the league. And the fact that he's done it in San Jose, where, outside of a brief window in 2012, have just suffered from, obscurity almost the entire time. But he keeps scoring, so.
Yeah, I like Steve's video is fantastic. It's like we've brought a guest on from Seattle and we're trolling him by just showing his team getting ripped apart. But I guess
no. I'm sorry, Michael. It's hilarious because the deal is like in half of these games, Seattle still gets a result despite what's going on in the background.
Well, if I had done just wins, there would have been that many goals. It would have been a shorter video.
I was going to say you've got the last laugh anyway because of tonight. So we'll get to this game very soon. Last thing I just want to mention about that San Jose Chicago game is it set everything up perfectly for the Whitecaps. I thought Chicago would win, and I thought that was going to mean that if the Whitecaps didn't win tonight, they'd be bounced from the tournament. But San Jose's win meant that barring a heavy defeat tonight, which you could argue whether 3-0 was a heavy defeat or not, the Whitecaps were still in with a fighting chance of going through. And I don't know if that would have affected MDS's game plan a little bit going into it, knowing that they could maybe attack a little bit more or risk trying to get some goals. But he went for a no-change starting lineup. Owusu, who we thought was going to be out, turned out to be fully fit. Well, fit at least, and he started the game. Were you surprised by that? Did you expect some changes?
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, I thought it was a weird case of same ingredients, different recipe, but ultimately a very, very poor dish. Yeah, they just tried to shuffle things around, right? Just moved Milinkovic to the back further on the right side, kind of put Russell out wide left, but sort of tucked in with Ali overlapping him, and it wasn't enough to shut down Seattle's quality designated players who create much of, if not all, that they have going forward.
So, sorry, Russell was playing in this game.
Oh my God.
Okay. I mean, Steve, they went 4-4-2. That's afterwards, just on MDS's post-game presser there, he said that is basically what this team is built to play. Didn't really look like that.
No, not in that case. And the thing is the reason why is because they still didn't have that wide player. Like, they had to move one of your wide players, the homie, into the middle, and that leaves where you're talking about Russell Tybert, who started out like that in his career on the wide, and then switched to middle, but didn't have anything in this game. So they need a better. I think it would. You could talk about this lineup, but maybe 4-4-2 would work if they had all their players in there, because you're missing all those strikers, and then you have Reyna and his homie that could go out wide then at that point. So I think it would work in that case.
Now, Stephen, when I saw Seattle's lineup, it looked the strongest starting lineup they could have put out there. They had all the big guns in. They had Morris starting, Rui Diaz, Ladero. It looked that Schmetzer was going for it from the off. He wanted to get some early goals on the board. That's what they ended up doing. But when you saw that lineup, is that how you thought about it as well?
Yeah, I think pretty much Schmetzer had kind of tipped his hand a bit in an interview a day or two before where he mentioned a lot of what was going to happen, that Yaimar Gomez Andrade was not going to be available, that Shane O'Neill would play, that Handwalla Bwana would get significant minutes. And so I think that was the one that probably outsiders might look at and be a little bit surprised at. But Bwana's been really solid for Seattle, and I think he had a good game as well tonight. But I was most interested to see that the Whitecaps were playing a flat 4-4-2. That didn't really make a ton of sense to me, to be honest. I haven't seen a lot of people have success doing that against Seattle. They're playing 4-2-3-1 with the two different lines in midfield, and they just combine so well in the center of the park. You have to have bodies there, and they can't all be in one line, just static in two blocks of four, right? And I think that was a death sentence from the offing.
Yeah, I think as well that Seattle cottoned on pretty quickly. The best way to attack was going to be up the left, their left, the Whitecaps right, and that's where a lot of the danger was coming from. Jordan Morris was just like unplayable at times out there. But it was a fast-paced start by both teams, and it was going back and forward. Both teams had their chances in the opening 10 to 12 minutes, and you thought, this is going to be a good game. But you did also think as well, as soon as Seattle do get a goal, it's going to be tough for the Whitecaps to get back into it. And that's when you look back at these early chances that the Whitecaps had. And I know Seattle had them as well, but you're kind of ruin the chances that the Whitecaps had before that first goal. Don't know if it would have made a great deal of difference, but it was a promising start. I mean, that first 10 minutes gave us a bit of hope that if they can keep that going or try and get that going against Chicago, we might get something.
Thought there was some good combination play down the middle in particular, and it made me think that the forward combination might even work for a moment. I thought Reyna in particular had a good first 10 minutes, and then that Milinkovic shot, the way that he was able to just skip past Nuhu that way, it was dangerous. And for all of Seattle's attacking spark and creativity that they came out with, they looked susceptible on the back end, and there were chances. There was space for Vancouver. And I think you're right. I think that opening 10 minutes, that's the best stretch of the entire game. Best look for Vancouver comes in there. And the failure to convert there probably is the ultimate issue.
Yeah. Well, let's get the first goal. Penalty. It's the new rules. If the ball hits the hand in the box, it's going to be a penalty. Kamiri didn't know too much about it. But, I mean, it was going to be a penalty if it hit the hand. I think it was a bit harsh giving him the yellow. I think that is in the new rules, though, as well. But it was easily drilled home by Ladero. And I think Crepeau sold himself a little bit early in it. He kind of really telegraphed what way it was going to go down. So Ladero had the easy job of slotting it home. And anyone not think it was a penalty?
I think it was a little harsh. I thought they were. I didn't feel like he exposed his arm outwards. I felt he was doing his best possible to keep it in, as you can see by the picture. I brought photographic evidence to the show. But he didn't take his hand outwards. He was keeping it in as far as in. Yeah. I thought the rules were that if you made yourself bigger, I don't feel like he made himself bigger. I felt his arm he was trying to keep it as tight as possible. I saw it in a different game too, where they were doing something like that, where the player tried to keep it as close as possible. I think it was the Colorado game against Sporting Kansas City, and he tried to keep his hand in, and then Ganter called it a foul on that one too, a penalty.
Yeah, that's Ganter though. We'll come to him in the third part.
I thought by the rules, Michael, it's a penalty. Yeah, his hand isn't super extended, but even the picture you got there, Steve, that you sent, I mean, his hand is out enough, and according to the rules, the ball touches the hand. It's a PK. Like, I don't know. We've already seen in this tournament lots of people and commentators talk about how their issue isn't necessarily with the ref on the field or the VAR people. It's with the rule itself. And so you can say you don't like the rule, but I think the rule has been implemented the way it's written. So I don't see this changing until IFAB or whatever decides that maybe, hey, this is not what they want. But yeah. I mean, we talked about this a lot in the past, Michael, about how many players will look to just play the ball off the arm when they have the opportunity, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that would be the case here, but
no, it was fired in though at some force. I mean, there wasn't really much you could do about it. I did have a discussion on Twitter though about players nowadays. They always turn away from the ball instead of just letting it kind of come towards them. It's a natural reaction. I think it is hard not to do that, but I mean, Ladero took the penalty really well. And after that, Stephen, I mean, you must have thought, oh, well, that's it. There's no looking back now.
After the second one, it was hard to see a way. I think that's the one where it kind of ceased to be a competitive game. But just to touch on the penalty just quickly, I thought there was that partial update to the rule where if the ball deflects off of one of your own teammates and then hits you, that they'd be more lenient towards that type of thing when that is accidental. But and so I was talking about it with the ref account, with the MLS ref account on Twitter, one of the, not the official one, but one of the fan ones. And they were saying that the only explanation is that it's that his hand is making his frame bigger there, and that it's in an unnatural, the hand is in an unnatural position. But for me, I thought it was really awfully harsh. I thought it was harsh, and I'm absolutely with you. The yellow card's over the top for it. I'm not really sure what he's supposed to do about it.
That kind of, and for a guy like Kamiri, who he likes to dive in and tackles, getting that yellow card early, that kind of negates the way he plays too all the time. Like they did a review, but they didn't go to the actual screen, right? So the VAR people didn't even recommend a review on there because it was so judgmental on there.
Yeah, I mean, they thought it was fine. But I mean, it did look a long way back, even at 1-0. But when it got to 2, it certainly looked like a long way back. But I mean, that goal, just one of the many things that I thought Jordan Morris did fantastically tonight, Stephen. He was my man of the match for the Sounders. The way that he played against Nerwinski and Kamiri up that wing, he just had the beating off them all night. And with the goal, he pounces on the loose ball, he makes the run, he receives the lofted pass. Great composure. Nerwinski can't barge him off the ball, buries it nicely. Where's that Jordan Morris been in the first 2 games, sir?
Geez, I think it's taken him a minute to get his fitness. He's diabetic. I think that's probably a factor for him. It's been hotter than heck in Orlando. Whatever it is, he certainly had it tonight. And man, he looks, as you mentioned earlier, borderline unplayable when he's at top speed. Combines so well, not just with Ladero, but with Rui Diaz as well. And I mean, just could do it all. Was cutting in and taking shots, was getting to the end line and putting in cutbacks. He ran the whole show for Seattle, I thought, maybe even more so than Ladero normally does.
Well, I think the difference between Morris in the first two games of this game was that he wasn't playing the Whitecaps in the first two games, especially the back line. With the second game, wasn't he a sub? He came on for half an hour or something like that?
I think he came on,
right.
yeah. But I mean,
yeah.
Like Rui Diaz didn't look very good in the first couple of games, and Ladero didn't look great, Morris didn't look great. Tonight, it's like something clicked. Although, and like I know Steve's partly being funny, but he is right. It's like they're playing against a Whitecaps defence that afterwards, and we'll talk a bit more about what MDS said afterwards, but I wrote down what he said in his post-game presser. He described the Whitecaps defence as incredibly unstable. Now, that's damning words from your head coach, and he says that they have to get to grips with this, and if they don't, then they've got no chance.
Yeah, a couple of things. Jasser Kamiri has not looked good at all. Many people have been commenting on this in the MLS's back tournament. His play in these two games has not been good. I also think that Jake Nerwinski was really, really poor this evening. His ball behind Owusu is what led to this goal. It was a poor pass. Owusu then takes a heavy touch because it's behind him, and then it kind of hands it to Seattle, and then they march on the other way. And Nerwinski can't recover enough to really trouble Jordan Morris. I didn't think he looked good. If I can just share, Michael, too, this is something Jonathan Pinkney was talking about in our comments here. He says, can you guys discuss how clearly Schmetzer seems to have the Caps beat tactically every time? They clearly target Jake at right back and then let the Caps have the ball in non-dangerous areas. So, I think the way Seattle went at Jake was, I think I would agree, was intentional.
Interestingly, the TSN commentators said that they thought Nerwinski was the Whitecaps' best player in the night, and I was like,
Well, they changed it up afterwards, saying that other than his mistakes, he was the best player. Which I don't know how you can do that. The biggest thing about I know tactically you're saying that, but for me, the Whitecaps have never, and I know the players have changed and everything. Ever since that Robbo playoff game, where they played to not to lose. Ever since then, the Whitecaps have never had a great result against the Sounders. It seems like, I don't know if it's mentally got into the media and the supporters, and the players are just not good enough, or it's kind of like delved into the players too over time. But it's odd the way that it's been like 3 years since they played the Sounders well enough to win.
I mean, Stephen, is it fair to say that Schmetzer just has a reading of the Whitecaps? Because I was on his pre-game call on Friday or Saturday. Friday it would have been. And I was surprised that he revealed some players that would definitely be starting. Like, he confirmed Arriaga was going to be starting, and just to come out and say, yeah, he's going to start, this is going to do this. He was very open, as if he's challenging the Whitecaps. This is what we're going to do. It's up to you to somehow defeat this.
I want to be clear that I mean this is objective analysis. Schmetzer has had some impressive tactical victories, some impressive tactical successes the last 3 or 4 years. None of the most 5 or 10 or 15 most impressive have to do with beating the Vancouver Whitecaps. It's not at the level of what he's been capable of. You look at what Seattle did at LAFC last year in the playoffs, where they just turned it on. That's insurmountable. You couldn't figure out how anybody could possibly come up with that with the team that he had compared to LAFC. But Vancouver's at square one every time Seattle sees them for that's the last 3 years since the playoff series. And I think you're exactly right, Zach. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if it was Zach or Steve who mentioned it. Vancouver played not to lose against Seattle in that playoff series, and it's never looked right since. And it just, I don't think Schmetzer has to think about it very hard. I think he sends his team out there and says, roll the ball and watch how it goes. And I think it works for him every time.
It was Steve, but he was speaking for both of us. But seriously though, the other thing I think Steve just said is that the thing that can't be undermined here is just the gap in the quality of players, the gap in the investment in the squads. it's clear. Like from another today is another example of it. Obviously, Vancouver's in a special situation where they're missing even some of their better players, but the gap is huge, and I don't foresee that ever being returning to a place where it feels like there's a bit of a balance and it's a bit of a challenge, like maybe back earlier in in the early days of MLS. It's always going to feel like it's going to take the Whitecaps to play out of their skin to beat teams like Seattle.
Well, another interesting thing that Schmetzer said on that call on Friday was he said that one of the proudest things he is of this Seattle team, Stephen, is that no matter what the odds are, they find a way to win. They find a way to get the job done. They did it tonight. They didn't have to maybe move out of second gear or third gear too much, but they did what he said. They got the job done.
Well, don't get me wrong. Jordan Morris is a skilled player, and he did a lot of very skilled things on the field tonight. But he also just straight up wanted it more than Nerwinski did on that side, and I think you could see it. He out hustled him the whole time, and that's not to suggest that Nerwinski can match him for pace. That's not to suggest that it isn't a structural failure for the Whitecaps every time he gets matched up one-on-one on the wing with him. But that being said, I mean, he just got out hustled by Morris repeatedly. And, I think the first 15 minutes of the second half, you could kind of see how this was going to go, where it was just like, oh boy, every time Seattle touched the ball, it's a diagonal ball in behind and it's a chance. And there wasn't an answer.
Well, the Whitecaps had, I think it was 60, might have been 66, but I think it was 60% possession in that first half. But they had no bite, no attacking threat, one shot on goal. And the final third, it was just, as we've seen too many times, was a place where attacks went to die. At that point, you were just hoping that things wouldn't get too out of hand, it wouldn't affect the goal difference, because otherwise we'd have to score an absolute barrel load against Chicago, which you still feel that they are going to have to do now to get through. Could they turn it around? Could they change things in the second half? We'll talk about that after this.
Hi, I'm Mark Dos Santos, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
One of these days should get away from London town, causing chaos and delay on the underground. I'll read your letter as I pass away the time, stuck in a tunnel on the Hammersmith and City line. Oh yeah. I'll hurry home a little bored but still alive, unlock the phone to keep the outside world outside. I'll take some aspirin and I'll take myself to bed. You'll be gone and you'll be dead, all because I never said, lean on me, I won't fall over. I'm made of steel and stone cold sober. If you feel the need, come over. Lean on me, I won't fall over.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. That was this week's song by this month's Artist of the Month, Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine, with the fantastic Lean on Me, I Won't Fall Over. A single released in August 1993, reached number 16 in the UK charts, and was taken from their fourth studio album, Post-Historic Monsters, which was released a month later. We've got one more week of Carter tunes to come. Hope you've enjoyed them so far. But let's get back to the football chat now, and back to looking at the aftermath of the Whitecaps against the Sounders. So the second half of Seattle and Vancouver. We only had to wait 6 minutes for a Sounders third. And after me moaning so much, and talked to MDS about this in our conference call during the week, about unmarked players in the 6-yard box. There's Rui Diaz, unmarked, just ready to, I want to say a tap in, but he had to do a little bit more than just tap it in, but not much. But I mean, how do you let a guy like that just unmarked in the 6-yard box?
It's mind-boggling, and they were saying that they were doing like a hybrid zonal man marking today. That's what they were saying on the broadcast. I think the confusion was definitely clear there that they were doing the hybrid. I can understand how he could slip in because he's basically the smallest player in the box, but still, you can't. You have to pay attention to the guy. He's so dangerous in and around the box, outside the box, everywhere. So that's the one guy you really have to pay attention to. And if you're going to do like a hybrid man marking zonal thing, that's the guy you want to man mark.
Yeah. So far in our first two games, we've left Wondo and Drew Diaz unmarked in the 6-yard box, Stephen.
Well, I mean, just, such an uphill climb to begin with. One forward on the roster down there. How's it going to work when you're giving up, corner kick goals on unmarked set pieces? It's just, it's incompatible with taking good results.
Well, it's not even leaving Rui Diaz unmarked. It's the unmarked man at the near post on the header to begin with. It's shocking like that you can allow a near post header like that on a corner at this level. Like that's just like inexcusable.
But I mean, when I spoke to Mark about it during the week, and he said, yeah, you want to talk about the 2 goals we let in from the corners, but we defended 20 of them really well. And it's like, yeah, but you gave away 22 corners. At least positive from tonight, there was not 22 corners. We've got to take what we can.
That is a positive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we'll rattle through the rest of the game. We'll get to folks' comments. The big talking point really for the rest of the game came in just a couple of minutes after Rui Diaz's third, 54th minute. Buana, Crepeau, clash in the box. Not intentional by Buana at all. He went for the ball. Max just unfortunate, gets his hand under it, gets stamped on. Looked like he got hit in the stomach as well, but it seems to be the hand injury that ruled him out. MDS was asked after the game if he'd had any updates on him, and it was a very short answer of no. No, he hasn't. So it's not looking good because they had to cut the glove off. But, I mean, Zach, he's the one guy last season that was the shining light. If you lose him now, we don't know what there's going to be for the rest of the season. You don't know how long he might be out for. But it's just they can't catch a break just now, except in this case they maybe have caught a break because it could be his hand that's fractured.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch it, you think that that's got to be what's happened. Otherwise, it's very badly bruised. But my guess would be that he has some kind of broken bone in there. But I mean, the play. There's nothing wrong with the play. The player's going for the ball. Max is going to win the ball. It happens. But yeah, in terms of the Whitecaps and the possibilities for what even the Chicago game, just thinking about that, and also thinking beyond that. Without Max Crepeau, I don't know that there's too many people who can see them getting much out of the Chicago game without him, and beyond that, doing much without him. I mean, Meredith's gone presumably for the Chicago game, and then who knows what's going to happen after that. So I don't know, like who's the third? Who's now the backup keeper?
They have got the fourth keeper, Isaac. I can't remember his last name. Isaac's the fourth keeper. But I don't know that he's down there with them or not.
He's not down there.
The one positive is that Zach's medical diagnosis is usually off because he had Owusu out for the season from the last game, and he played quite a bit of minutes today. So that's the one positive about Max Crepeau we can take it. Another one is that Thomas Hassel came in and he showed a lot of poise in that one play he did against Rui Diaz, but. You could I don't know what his voice sounds like, but
you heard him.
The one of the commentators was saying that who's he? I'm drawing a blank because I haven't seen games in a long time. One of them was mentioning that Paul Dolan. That's Paul Dolan.
How can you forget Paul Dolan?
I forgot. It's in my mind. Paul Dolan was mentioning that he could hear him on the pitch and like shouting out, and he said that's one of the hardest things to do for young keepers is getting a hold of, and he seemed to be getting a hold of everybody.
I thought he did excellent. The double save. I was a bit surprised though, Stephen, that Seattle didn't really try and test him a bit more. But by that point, do you think Seattle had kind of just switched off and they thought, job done, let's not waste any more energy than we need to?
Yeah, this is one of my theories about soccer in the bubble. With the home crowd removed, it's taken away the incentive for the home team to entertain.
That's
yeah. And we could get, because I was checking over some of the tables, I'm sure we'll talk about later, but we could potentially see some East Germany, Austria type games in the last round.
I asked Axel during the week, like if teams knew what it was going to be like going in, was it going to be like West Germany and Austria in the 1982
Oh, was it West Germany? I thought it
final?
was East Germany.
Yeah. And he said he tries not to think about that. I told him it scarred my childhood. So, I mean, the rest of the game, not too much to talk about. MDS made 5 subs. That was a positive. Reina, well, there was a few chances for the Whitecaps late on. Reina had a chance that he blasted over. That, in the back of my head, I still think we don't have a great chance of going through, but there is still a chance. And you have to think, if one of these chances had gone in, that in the grand scheme of things for goal difference might have been massive.
I think it would. I think they still would have had to win by 2, even if they got 1 goal in.
Oh yeah.
So I think that.
But
so
like,
I don't think
by
that
2 just now, I don't think makes a big difference, because I've looked at the standings. I mean, depending on how many games get drawn and out of the last games and stuff like that, I think they're going to need 3 or 4 to get through, because I don't think a minus goal difference is going to do it. But I mean, it feels to me, Stephen, that these chances that they had late on, Seattle had switched off a little bit, and they had to take 1 or 2 of those, I think, to be in with a fighting chance.
So I think here's the revisionist history for me you can go over. Is you can say, first off, there's the Owusu header on the free kick in the first half that we didn't talk about, I think inside of 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Very good point.
That's the most important chance of the game. I'm sorry, I totally missed it earlier, but I mean, that is a free header with Fry on the opposite side of the goal. If that's on target, it's in the back of the net every single time. He's got to cash that, right? So let's say Owusu hits that one. Let's say that Whitecaps don't give up a free goal on a corner at the start of the second half, just out of nothing. And let's say that Reina does get the one in the mid-80s. That's 2-2, and you get a point.
Yep. If the Queen had ball, she'd be the king.
Yeah, and that's I was expecting that. I think.
Yeah, but I mean, it's very true. As a once wise man used to say, fine lines. It's fine lines. If we're looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly from the Whitecaps, and then we'll get Stephen to do a good and bad, the ugly for Seattle. If you're looking at the good, I'm saying Thomas Hasal, and just it showed something good. And I thought Ranko as well had another pretty solid game.
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, the bad was just the general lack of creativity in that final third until really late on. But the ugly was also that, but also the way that Morris just ripped him apart up that side.
Yeah, I would say one of the good was the 66% possession. And then I would say bad is the 66% possession and the getting no goals out of it.
Yeah. Zach, what's your good, bad, and ugly for Vancouver?
It was all ugly. I don't know. What seriously? What good can you take away from that game and that performance? Like, I don't think anything. There's nothing positive.
Does that
Nobody
mean
died on the pitch.
you're not giving us
I'm
a
sorry.
man of the match?
I guess Thomas Hassel. Thomas is, how do you say? Is it Hassel, or we've always said Hassel, but then
I think it's Hasal.
Oh, okay. Well, Thomas was the only bright spot, and so he's the good. The bad was everything else, and the ugly is Max Crepeau's hand.
Oh yeah. It's kind of sad that your good thing is a young homegrown guy coming on because your main player gets injured and has gone out. But anyway, Stephen, if you were doing a good and bad and ugly for Seattle, what would you pick?
The good's pretty easy. Jordan Morris getting back into form, looking great, looking like a top attacker in MLS. The bad, from a Cascadian perspective, I love it, but from the Seattle perspective, it looks like the Sounders are headed for either LAFC or Portland in the knockout round, and I believe that is going to be a tall task for them either way. The ugly is the center back situation with Arriaga potentially concussed with the shot he took to the head late in the game. O'Neill appeared to pull up a little bit as well. We're not sure if he's good. And then with Gomez Andrade already a bit injured, it looks like Seattle could have some type of center back pairing like Svensson Delem or something like that. Kind of odd stuff coming up for their knockout round game with their back line.
Steven, is it bad that I had the ball to Arriaga's face is one of my potential highlights of the game.
I thought it was nice that Reyna, like literally the second that it happened, he's not worried about where the ball's going. He's not worried about, is this going to create a Whitecaps chance? He's going over to Arriaga and encouraging him to sit on the ground and like trying to get the ref to stop the game. And I thought it was a nice moment of sportsmanship. And as a guy who covers all these teams at the same time, it made me feel warm and fuzzy.
I was disgusted.
I think I think that's what happens when you play a Cascadia match like halfway across the continent. You're not going to have that same anger and venom at each other.
Yeah, you don't have the Whitecaps fans sing "Dig a Hole and Bury Him."
Yeah.
Talking of like,
well, and no matter what happens, sorry to interrupt, Michael. No matter what happens, nobody wants head injuries, right? We all want to come out of the game, and we don't want to see what happened to Crepeau happen. We don't want head injuries. We want to have great rivalries, but not life threatening.
Yeah, we don't want any more people ending up like Taylor Twellman.
We should tell the Whitecaps that Seattle wants a great rivalry.
But like talking of balls to the face, and you might wonder where I'm going with this, but ex-Whitecap Jose Aja took one straight to the face for Minnesota in one of the games, and afterwards, I don't think I mentioned this last time round, but afterwards Adrian Heath was asked about it, and it's like he looked like he was concussed. Should he have come off? And Heath goes, "No, he's from Uruguay. They don't have concussions in Uruguay." Not the best medical advice, I thought. I'm just going to quickly go through the stats because I've just looked at them just now, and I'm actually a little bit stunned by some of them. The Whitecaps had more passes than Seattle and better passing accuracy than Seattle, including 44 more passes in the final attacking half, and they had 7 more passes in the final third. I was watching a different game.
I can't wait to see JJ Adams' heat map after this one.
But it just shows you that stats don't mean everything when it comes to especially things like football.
Yeah, well, the Whitecaps only had 2 shots on target in the whole game to Seattle's 7. So I mean, there was that. What was the
XG, Michael?
I don't think I see that here. That's all bollocks anyway, if you ask me. But anyway,
Steven, set them straight on XG.
Does XG count in Orlando? Is it the same there? Is there some type of like multiplier you have to factor in with that?
I think Orlando that's where the test results. Yeah. So, before we get any further, let's get into the chat because I see that there is a lot of chat questions. So I'll just rattle through some of them.
I've been trying to answer some of them there, Michael.
Oh, cool. So Andrew Chobaniak says, it's over. We should all give up on everything.
That's Morbital, right?
Yeah.
Morbital.
It's morbid. I don't know about Morbital, but yeah, it is Morbital. Mike Gom says, we can't seem to play at night. How could the morning be worse? Find out Thursday at 6 a.m. on TSN. Will Silver asks Steve, is that a Pentagon Junior mask?
It is. Pentagon Junior.
Paul Pedersen says, the Caps are playing for the first overall pick in the draft next year. I think we can do it, except it won't be the first pick because Austin come in. So it'll be second pick.
Aren't they delayed too, or are they not delayed?
Austin's coming in. It's Charlotte, Sacramento, and St. Louis that are all delayed by a further year. Let's see. Andrew Chabanik again says, when did Wando start? Was he at Swangard in 2004 with the earthquakes? He remembers Landon Donovan being there. That's before my time. I was here 3 years after that. Were you there for that, Zach?
No, Michael, he wasn't there. He joined 2005.
Okay. Navid Masinchi says, seriously, the game looked like men versus boys. Can't disagree with that one at all. Jonathan Pinkney says, the difference between how the Sounders kill games off against us compared to how we let San Jose keep pace of the game high until the end is crazy. And that's the difference. It's like the top teams know how to manage games, and that's been a problem of the Whitecaps for many years now, guys.
Was there a moment outside of the first 15 minutes where Seattle wasn't in total control?
No. I mean, even in that first 15 minutes, it was back and forth. So, I mean, Seattle could also have had about 3 or 4 goals in that first 15 minutes. It could easily have been 4-2 if all those chances had gone in, but they were in control from first kick to last. I mean, even the offside goal 3 minutes in, that should have set the alarm bells going for the defence, because I can't remember, I think it was Lodero, it might have been Rui Diaz, but whatever one of the two it was, just waltzed his way through the Whitecaps defence before squaring the ball to Buana, who put it away but had been offside before that. So, I mean, that was the early signs 3 minutes in that Seattle just had the beating of this team and the taking of this defence.
I mean, geez, they'd produced an end product one time in 180 minutes before that, and then 3 minutes in, you've already got the ball in the net.
Yeah.
Whether it counted or not.
I was doing the Raphael Wicky press conference upstairs, so I hadn't got the game, so I had just finished, and I came down, and I looked at my telly, and I said to my wife, is the ball in the net? Have they scored already? And then I didn't know what had happened. I was like, this is going to be a long night. And then I saw that it was offside. But a question from Will Silver. Is the new car smell off MDS?
I think it's been off for a while. I think for that first season, for a lot of people, it was off. The thing is with him is like, he's not that he's making excuses, but he constantly has these excuses being given to him.
It was like Robbo always said, I'm not one to make
Yeah.
excuses, and then came out with all these excuses.
But here, these ones are more legit. Like, especially this tournament, you lose like 5 players right off the bat coming into the thing. Your backup goalie is out, leaves the bubble and is out. It's probably not going to come back at this point. And then you have couple of injuries during training, and then you have your starting goalkeeper and your MVP from last year go down in the 50th, 60th minute of game 2. You basically are he's been being given excuses, and I don't know how you could fire a guy who's gone through all this stuff over the last couple of years.
I don't think he's anywhere close to getting fired, but there are a lot of fans who have been very critical.
I think the fans want him to get fired. Fans are looking for him to go or get rid of him or something like that.
Yeah, some are.
Yeah, lots of fans are asking this or talking about this in the places that they do. This is not going to be surprising for you, Steve and Michael, but the problem with the Vancouver Whitecaps has not been their coaches' abilities to coach or tactical approach. It's been their willingness to invest in their squad. And when you think back to the Robbo era, and you think back how Robbo used the language of, we need all of our players playing at their level or above, to do well, to achieve. And the thing is, Robbo got his players to do that. I think a lot of what we saw in the Robbo era were when they were doing well is because everyone, or virtually everyone, was playing at their best level or sometimes above that. And I think people saw that and they thought, the Whitecaps as an organization, as a football club, are in a much, like, they're doing really well. And they thought that should be the standard, or they thought that that should be the minimum, and the Whitecaps should be able to kick on beyond that. And it's very, very clear to people who've been around long enough, or people who understand, or people who've seen a little bit behind the curtain, that you can't keep doing that. It's not replicable for players to continue to play at their top level or beyond themselves on an ongoing basis, especially in a league like MLS, and especially when your top players are barely at $1.5 million, and you only have like maybe one of those. And so that's what's going on here. And so anyone who wants to attack, whether it's MDS or Robbo or even Martin Rennie, you can have Tommy Sohn all you want, or even Tater, but those 4 guys, you want to attack any of those 4 guys, they're really, the deck that they've been given is limited, and so the deck is stacked against them in the game that they're playing. So only ownership can choose to help change that situation, and we know that's not changing, and it's not likely to change. And what's going to have to happen is going to be them unearthing some players like Alphonso Davies or whatever, who they unearthed. They brought in from Edmonton, or it's going to take Axel Schuster bringing in some people from Germany or from Europe who are diamonds in the rough, or who want to come on a loan spell and play out of their skin because they want to push on to somewhere bigger and better. That Vancouver is going to have a chance to be even semi-competitive in the long run. Otherwise, people need to understand that what what we're seeing, even in this MLS's back tournament, is more what they should expect in the long term from this organization.
I disagree with that. And like Stephen, you won't probably have heard MDS post game, but like he got a bit prickly with a question from JJ where he said, "What can we read into what you've got with this team just now?" And a lot of folk are saying, "Oh, they're making excuses for the players that's missing." You can't get away from that. If those players were there, this is a different Whitecaps team. And I mean, you're like neutral in this, Stephen. It's like you have to say that if those players are there, you've got a different kind of game. To an extent, I do feel you still have to get them service, and I don't think it would have mattered who was up front for the Whitecaps tonight. If they're not getting the ball, they're not actually going to do much with it. But that aside, you can't read anything into the team that's there just now because they are missing so many key pieces. 6 or 7 of those guys probably would not be starting, I feel.
I've been wanting to ask you guys, do you think it was fair of MLS to have Vancouver play in this tournament with so many guys missing?
I mean, MLS needed them for numbers. They
Yeah.
were losing to other sides. There was no way they're going to drop down to 23.
But also, it's like that's what you
No. And I get that. I understand the logistical aspect to it. But I mean, selfishly now, for the Vancouver Whitecaps, as a fan of this team, is this fair? Would you rather watch this? Would you rather watch going from 3-1 up against Earthquakes to 4-3 down and then losing 3-zip in a derby where you're not very competitive? Is that better than just saying, you know what, if Cavallini and Montero and Ricketts and so on and so forth can't go, we might as well just sit at home? I don't know the answer. I'm asking the question because I think it might merit discussion.
No, I don't think that's. I don't think they would have been taken out because the difference between Nashville and FC Dallas being taken out is they had rampant positive tests, whereas Vancouver were getting people opting out or something like that,
Yeah.
opting out, or in Ricketts' point where he was forced to be opt out or whatever. Like the doctor in charge said that you shouldn't go, or Andy Rose, I think, same thing. So I think in those cases, I don't think it's unfair for MLS to expect the Vancouver to come because other than that, those 5 players or 6 players that didn't come and none of them tested positive, so that's not the reason why they didn't come. Vancouver's been very clean. So you know what? You come, you do the tournament, you get some playing time in there. You might as well get some in there. None of us really expected them to do very much going into the tournament. We were hoping that, with FC Dallas, maybe they get something because all their players were falling apart. So I thought maybe we play a B team against FC Dallas, maybe we be competitive that game. And then we get Chicago coming in. That changes everything then.
If you look at the biggest complaint that I saw after the first game was there was a big argument. Fans were saying, well, play the young guys. Why are they not playing the young guys? I don't feel this is a tournament. And in that San Jose game, when you're 1 goal up and you've got a team pressing to get back into it, why are you going to bring on young guys to give them their MLS debut? You need to see that game out. Ultimately, they didn't. But if MDS had played the young guys, they'd be like, why is he bringing the young guys on? They couldn't see out the lead. So he can't win in that regard. And I think going into this last game, if it had been meaningless, folk would be like, just play all the young guys. But MDS has made it clear he's wanting these regular season points. So no matter what this last game, if it stood for anything or not, you were always going to get as full a strength a team as possible.
Yeah, but Michael, in the last game, though, here's the thing. The game against San Jose, you don't have to bring on young players for the sake of bringing on young players. However, you need to react, I think, a little bit better when your opponent brings on 4 brand new fresh players with fresh legs who very clearly are running you ragged. And so at that point, it doesn't matter if they're young. It doesn't matter if they're, you take the next best player who can contribute in whatever position and you bring them on because you need some fresh legs. And so I think that was a fair criticism in that game. And in terms of, what I said in terms of what the trajectory of Vancouver, like last year was a part of that, Michael. The team was awful last year, even with I know half a team that maybe MDS wanted and or the third or 2/3 of the team he wanted and a third he didn't. But like the trajectory is not going up. Like that's the thing. I don't think anyone can look at this and say the trajectory is up. Even though, yes, in this tournament, they are missing significant players.
Yeah.
But to answer Steven's question, like, I don't think most people, most parts of the Vancouver fan base don't see MLS as viewing how they engage with the Whitecaps as being fair in general. But I do think there is a segment of them who would have said, "Hey, if Vancouver wasn't there, we would have been fine with that."
I agree with that.
They would avoid potentially being more be able to come more in contact with the virus. If they could stay home and avoid it, most people would have been, I think, fine with that. There would have been a few people who would have not been super excited, but I think a lot of people would have been like, "Hey, we understand, we're with you."
Well, as I tweeted after the game, MLS is back, but I'm now starting to wish it wasn't. And we got a comment in the chat from Gordy Parenteau who says, David Norman Jr. would have looked good out there, but that's none of my business. Sips tea. Yep, David Norman would have looked good out there. Sadly, he's injured just now, so he's not able to even be with Miami there. But yeah, Gordy also says that it describes the Caps' entire MLS existence. They're just there to make up the numbers. Fair, so far. Right, let's quickly finish off this part by looking ahead to Thursday. Now, it's maybe not as huge a game as I thought it was going to be at the start of kickoff, because they do have a big job ahead of them. And as things currently stand, they need a 2-goal swing to overtake Chicago. But even with that, looking at the other matches, they'd need a lot of help. The advantage is they do go into the game knowing exactly what they're going to need to do. It's just kind of hard to see them doing it. From the 2 games that you've seen of Chicago so far, I thought they weren't very good defensively. I think there is a lot of hope to take from the goals that they gave up today. The first goal, like defensively, Chicago looked shaky. The first goal today, they looked shaky on the ground. The second goal today, they looked shaky in the air. They weren't picking the man up. They weren't good with pace. And you look at the Whitecaps, Stephen, and the Whitecaps have pace. Raposo, Dahomey, Bayer, Milinkovic, possibly not a lot of pace, but he's got the skill. These are guys that, from what we've seen from Chicago so far, they have the potential to take advantage of them.
And, I think they're going to be those few moments in the game where Whitecaps get the big looks, where they get the big chances, and they certainly did against Seattle today, like we talked about with Owusu and with Reyna. And whether that would have been enough tonight is debatable. But against Chicago, they're going to get some of those looks again. I bet they're going to get at least a few of them. And it comes down to, can you finish? You're not going to get as many of those moments as your opponent is. That you're just not going to be able to go toe to toe all the time. And so when those big moments come, you've got to take them. You've got to score. If that big chance comes for Owusu early again, it's got to hit the net. And it's just, I think an early goal, a lead of some sort could do wonders for confidence. I understand 3-1 wasn't safe against Earthquakes a few days ago, but still, look at where we're at right now. Just any type of positive sign, I think, might be met by some type of positive response. But it's just, you're going to have to play really tight all the way around, right? Score a goal on the counter, score a goal on a set piece. A penalty would help, a red card would help, right? But it's just got to be really tight at the back, and it has to be really, really clinical with whatever chances you create.
The other thing is Chicago don't look as deadly up front as, say, what San Jose have and what Seattle showed tonight. They've got Beric, he looked good in the game against Seattle early on and kind of dropped out of it. Tonight, he wasn't really at the races. Sapong, I thought, started off tonight's game really well. As I said, I jumped on the Raphael Wicky conference call after the game just to kind of see what he said. So I jotted down a few of the things that he took away from the game. And he said that they need to learn to be clinical. They need to be more concentrating on set pieces and what they're doing in the last 30 yards. He was frustrated by San Jose's aggression. So if the Whitecaps want to try and get under their skin, show a little bit of aggression, not sure we have the players, though, that's going to be able to do that. He wanted the team against San Jose to keep the ball more. And I'm wondering if that's what the game plan is going to be against the Whitecaps. He also said, though, that sleeping well, eating well, recovery, and using his roster for this last game is going to be the key to get anything out, and that his message to the team is to keep steady emotionally. He feels the effort was there today, which I didn't. I thought they looked apart from the first 10-15 minutes, they looked quite flat. But he seemed fairly confident that they could get the job done against Vancouver.
I would think he's more confident after watching Seattle play Vancouver as well.
Because that was before that performance. For those of you listening on the podcast, I'll play just a little bit of Raphael Wicky's post-game press conference comments for you just now.
I guess just what's the takeaway from tonight's match? What are some of the lessons learned, and how can you apply them going forward starting Thursday morning?
Well, it was the expected difficult game, hectic game. I think the lesson is that in these games you don't have 10 chances, you have a few. You need to be clinical through open plays or through pressing and winning the balls, and then or set pieces. When you have a few, you got to be, I think, more concentrated and be better in the last 30 yards to actually then take advantage of the game. But otherwise, it was an expected hard game, physical game, lots of challenges. For the most part of the game, we were well organized, which is a good point. But overall, I think it was too hectic, and we need to try to be more calm with the ball.
The team started so strong in the first 10-15 minutes, but then it seemed to get a little bit flat. You've got such a short turnaround to this next game. How do you feel you're going to lift them for this game and get some of the energy levels back?
Yeah, it's true. We started very well. I think we started very, very aggressive and pressed them high and made their life difficult, because it's a team which has a lot of possession normally, and we were able to steal some balls and make it hard. We knew it's not possible to at 90 minutes. Normally, then you should keep more of the ball yourself so that the opponent runs. And I think, we were not able to do that good enough to keep the ball, to keep them running. But we have now 3.5 days, and it's a short turnover for all the teams who will play. So it's about sleeping well, eating, recovery, and then be ready again. And we have a roster. We need all the players.
Just looking forward to next game. Obviously, you guys still have your destiny for the knockout stages in your control. So at this point, what's your message to the team about not just taking care of themselves off the field between now and Thursday, but just kind of mentally where you want them to be at, knowing that you guys still control your own destiny in terms of your future in this tournament?
It's important to keep your heads up. I mean, it's a football game. We lost a football game today. We won one the last time. You can be when you win on the top and when you lose on the bottom. So you got to keep steady emotions, and it's a football game. We're going to stand up again. We're going to keep working. We're a good team. We had good moments today. It's a tight game, very tight, with few details who decide the game, and that's the message which I will give the players. The effort was there. The effort was there for 90 minutes, and that is very positive. So now we have to recover, and we're going to be ready in the next game.
I fell in love again. All things go, all things go. Drove to Chicago. All things know, all things know.
And that is pretty much it for this part. Quick prediction before we wrap this part up. Score on Thursday. I'll go 1-1.
I'm going to say 1-1. I think they'll get a result in this game. I'll give Zach's prediction. It's going to be 2-0 Chicago.
Close. Steven, you want to go or should I go first?
I do have 2-0 Chicago, so Steve got me.
Okay. I honestly was going to say 2-1 Chicago.
Yeah, so not much hope with us. Let's hope we're proved wrong. I'm not sure I'm even going to get up and watch the game. I put a poll out about that earlier in the week. I haven't got it up here just after I checked that. I forgot all about that. And the three options were you going to watch it live? Yes, only if there's something to play for, or no. And the biggest thing with about 43-44% was no, they're not going to watch it live. And then yes, they will watch it live was also 40-something. And 16-17% said only if there was something to play for. I probably will get up. I'm just not a morning person, as I've mentioned before. Anyone else here getting up to watch it live?
Well, if we're doing a show, then I will get up and watch it. If not, maybe not.
Yeah, that's me too. That if we're doing a show, then I'll get up. Otherwise, I'll watch it on delay.
Steven,
it's your call, Michael.
There's something to play for, Michael. There's 3 league points.
Stephen, you getting up nice and early?
I did it once for Chicago, but I just want to say here, living on the west coast of North America, the only time we should be getting up at 6 a.m. to watch one of our clubs play should be if they're in the Club World Cup, and that is absolutely it. If I'm doing that again, it's for something a lot more important than an MLS League match.
Yeah. I'm thinking of not watching the game, but then getting up just in time for MDS's post-game presser and getting the first question and going, I haven't seen the match, Mark. Can you tell me what happened?
That'd be awesome.
We're going to talk in the next part about some of the other matches from this tournament, but the KC Colorado thing, I tweeted out that I wanted my first question to be to Robin Fraser, Dave Ganter, discuss. So I got into the press conference and they sat down and they didn't know the mics was on, and Fraser says to, I can't remember what player it was, he's like, do not talk about the officiating, not knowing that it was on the mics. So then I raised my hand to ask a question, and they never picked me to ask a question. Was gutted by that. Also, Robin Fraser, very grumpy man. One of the other questions I was going to ask him, someone else asked, and I'm glad I didn't ask it because he nearly bit his head off. But anyway, we'll come to talking about that in the next part. And for those of you listening to it on the podcast, we'll be back with that after this.
Hi, I'm Maxime Crépeau from the Vancouver Whitecaps, and you're listening to the AFTN Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off our first of our three-of-a-kind tunes tonight is a song by a legendary Canadian punk band. They started off life in Edmonton in 1981, moved to Vancouver in 1992. That was the song Tears by SNFU, taken from their third studio album, 1988's Better Than a Stick in the Eye. Now that song kicks off tonight's Three of a Kind section, as I mentioned, for any new listeners to the show, or for any of you that just need a little reminder. At the starts of parts 3, 4 and 5, we're going to play a song, and each song is going to be linked in some way. Your job over the next 3 parts is to work out what that link might be. If you have worked it out by the end of the second song, can you try and guess what the third song might be that kicks off part 5? But the reason I played that song Tears by SNFU wasn't just to kick off this week's Three of a Kind, it was also to pay tribute to lead singer Ken Chin, Mr. Chai Pig, who died this week, aged 57 after a long illness. Sad loss to the Canadian punk scene, an absolute legend in the punk world. Rest in peace, Mr. Chai Pig. You've left a great legacy behind you. But let's get back to the football chat now. One thing I meant to mention actually in the last part, when you talked about getting up early for games, the World Cup schedule in Qatar. 2 a.m, 5 a.m, 8 a.m, and 11 a.m. games on the West Coast in the group stages.
But I have a feeling that the games that we would probably want to watch, they'll probably schedule it so that a lot of our games will be. Oh, hello. A lot of our games will be probably those later ones. I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, probably
the European ones.
Well, I don't know. Can't guarantee that. Yeah, she got up, so I thought I'd may as well get her on.
Scores?
Does Penny what?
Does Penny predict scores?
No, I've tried. She's no interest in football. She takes that after my wife. I've been worried that you've been hearing her panting in the mic the whole time. So if you do hear heavy breathing, it is her. It's not me, because the light in here is terrible. And I actually have a spotlight on me and her just now, and I am melting. I'll show you my top I'm wearing. It's my 1996 East 5 3rd strip tartan. We wore this against Man United. Lost 4-0 against a team that had Beckham, Scholes, all these top guys in it. I've told this story before. Outside the match, I was selling fanzines, and I went to give one to Alex Ferguson. I went, there you go, Alex. And then he signed it and gave it back to me. I went, no, it's for you to read. And then I gave him another one. I have a feeling he probably didn't read it.
You kept the autographed one, though, right?
I've still got the autograph one, yeah.
That's good.
I'll sell that when he dies. I thought I could have sold it last year, but that didn't work out. Anyway, let's get into the MLS tournament chat. General thoughts, lads, from what we... Good beer, this. General thoughts, lads, of what we have seen so far in the tournament. It's been batshit crazy this week. No team, it seems, Stephen, can defend in MLS right now.
Yeah, it's weird. I just, 30,000 foot view, I have a hard time judging anyone in the bubble, anything that goes on in Orlando, and taking any of it too seriously, And it seems like some of the analysts, particularly on the national broadcasts, want to make something of the performances, want to extrapolate some trend from March to here and that kind of thing. And I think this is such a crapshoot one-off. You know what I mean?
I think the probably the game that probably displays that the most is the one where Atlanta lost. I think it was to Cincinnati.
To Cincinnati, yeah.
I think that's the one that really encompasses that you can't really take too much out of this tournament at all.
No. Cincinnati's another team that haven't let me ask questions. The last couple of conference calls have gone on as well. I don't know if it's after my Alan Koch interview or not that Vanney was quite critical of them.
Maybe they heard our like talking about their culture or something like that on our show.
I'll give you an example real quick. The Seattle fan base is freaking out about Arriaga, who they just brought in last June, right? Was a designated player when they got him, is now just on a TAM contract now that Joao Paulo is here. But they're saying, man, this guy can't defend. He's 24, right? He's 24. He's been out of Ecuador for less than a year. Started in the game where Seattle knocked out LAFC at LAFC, and then MLS Cup again 10 days later, right? But apparently, because after several months away, and then a shortened second preseason because Arriaga made 2 mistakes in a game against the Chicago Fire at 6 a.m. Pacific time, he is no longer the future center back for the Seattle Sounders. Go figure.
I would love him to stay.
That just doesn't hold water for me.
No, I think he should be centre back, definitely, because he seems dreadful. He should play every game.
Don't get me wrong. He's had a tough tournament here so far, but I mean, man, the guy's already got 1 ring.
True. If you want to talk tough tournaments, have a word with Jasser Kamiri. Let's look at the Canadian derby on Thursday. TFC Montreal. It's as if they thought, okay, we watched that game the night before. We can do better than that. It wasn't such shit defending, to be fair, that you saw in the Quakes Vancouver game, but it was an entertaining derby, and I think the main turning point was Montreal letting TFC score seconds after they brought it
after the penalty.
Yeah, I mean that's a killer for the team. And I've been in a couple of calls with Montreal this week, and like Thierry Henry just he doesn't really know what to do with his team right now. He kind of sounded a little bit dejected today when I heard him actually talk. After the first game, he felt he wasn't getting the passion that he wants to see.
Yeah, and after all his the way he coached in Monaco, it's surprising that he hasn't been able to get Montreal the Impact going on the right track.
I mean, when you talk about this tournament, you one of the things that you can't talk about it without talking about the people who aren't there, right? So in Vancouver, it's very obvious. There's multiple significant players who are not there. But then you also Martinez isn't with Atlanta, right? You got what's his face at the Goats too. Carlos Vela is not there. There's a number of players who are not there, which I think maybe not taints the tournament, but it definitely shapes people's perception of it. However, also in a tournament like this, with all its foibles and weirdness and crazy kickoff times and all that, you do have a few interesting and positive and meaningful stories coming out of it, and Toronto is one of them, and Akinola and his goal scoring prowess, both against DC and against Montreal, is one of the highlights or one of the more significant and interesting things that's happened. Also, it's not just on the field. He's been exciting. It's the potential off-field drama in terms of, will he stay with the U.S.? Will he, choose to play for Canada, or will he maybe decide, answer an email from Nigeria and go there?
You never want to answer emails from Nigeria.
Yeah, don't do that.
No.
Don't do that.
I'm glad you got my joke there. Okay, so but no, it is probably has been the highlight of the tournament in my opinion. Is he's been the star, and he's been a great talking point, and you kind of, I guess, you just hope that he's able to, whenever the season resumes or when next year starts, that he's able to kick on and keep going, if not at the crazy pace he's going with 5 goals in two games, but somewhat of a regular scoring pace, and be able to continue to develop as a professional footballer.
I think as long as Herdman confirms that he's not going to play right back, I think there's a very good chance he'll play for Canada. I think that's might be the tipping point right there.
I mean, what have you made of Akinola, Stephen? I mean, right now he is an American because he's been capped at youth level. He has said that he's open to whoever he plays for internationally. Canada, there's a kind of story that was on Twitter earlier this week that Canada hadn't treated him very well, or hadn't made overtures to him, so that's why he ended up at the US. I mean, I guess you wouldn't have seen too much of him, but what have you seen from these matches? And I know, going back to what we said, you can't read too much into this little bubble atmosphere, but he's looked fantastic.
I think, to be clear, it's fairer to read into people having explosive breakout performances than it is to read into people having some type of negative performance, right? Where a guy, makes, once again, back to Arriaga, makes a couple mistakes, doesn't mean he's not going to have a successful career in the league. To be honest, I haven't seen a ton of Akinola yet. I've focused most of my attention on the Western Conference. But I think with guys like Bradley and Altidore on the same club there, it makes it an interesting proposition for him, living in Canada but having these American stars on the team with him. And to be honest, I'm sorry, I don't know him well enough to know. Haven't heard his particular comments on the matter to have a gut feeling one way or the other yet.
What's exciting to me, and it's like, obviously I'm not a TFC fan, is can you imagine him playing up front with Altidore? Like, is that twosome with Pozuelo a little bit further back or something? That's like a deadly, deadly attack.
Yeah, if they could make it work tactically, yeah.
Yeah, because they are kind of similar, big bustling style. One other thing I do want to say is, probably back 2014-15, I was a little bit critical of Greg Vanney. I wasn't sure that he was the right man to lead TFC, and we talked about it on the show. But just over the last few years, he has impressed me so much. And just like listening to him talk in his press conferences, and I've been fortunate enough to get to ask him a couple of questions over the last few weeks, and he's a great guy. I think, could he someone, Stephen, that you could see possibly leading the US national team at some point?
Yeah, definitely. He's done terrifically well in his time there so far, and anytime you see a young, promising coach like that come through the pipeline, I just don't want to repeat of the Tata Martino situation, to be honest, or we've got a great coach in MLS who we let get away.
Right, let's move on to the match of the tournament so far, which was KC Colorado, and just the craziness that went with that. For Colorado to get themselves back level, I actually let out a yes when they tied things up after everything that had happened. It was just a natural reaction. And then I felt so gutted for them when KC went up the other end and scored. But it meant Johnny Russell got a win, so I wasn't too unhappy. But for me, that was the game of the tournament. Any disagreement on that? And what did you make of it? It was one of those matches. We've seen Dave Ganter before, especially in Whitecaps games, ruin matches. For me, he ruined that match.
Or did he make it more exciting because of the comeback?
Oh, well, there's that aspect.
That was one of the few matches I've seen in this tournament. So I would, by default, I would say that it's probably the more exciting one. Obviously, I know Vancouver lost the game, but you got to say the San Jose Vancouver game was pretty exciting. compared to
Yeah.
the other ones. The way he went back and forth and everything like that in the comeback. But the one that was shocking to me was the Galaxy LAFC game, 6-2. I didn't see that result. I thought LAFC would win, but 4 goals from Rossi. You guys are talking about Carlos Vela not showing up for the tournament. They can afford that when they have a player like Diego Rossi to take over for him. That was
Also,
amazing.
Bradley Wright Phillips has looked good.
Yeah, he looks like he kind of returned to form a little bit, especially the goal against the Galaxy. Just how he just so almost toyed with the defender before placing it, so perfectly in the bottom corner or in the far side of the net. I think the Colorado Kansas City game, Michael, had these different kinds of sparks. So like I think for the dramatic flair, Steve's probably right. I think the San Jose winner against Vancouver, it might be the best ending to a game or most exciting ending to a game. But yeah, there were different kinds of sparks in that the Kansas City Colorado game, the sending offs and the drama around that, and then like you said, a team feeling short coming back to equalize and feeling like they were getting something from the match was really exciting. And then their hopes were all kind of dashed at the end. And I'm opposite of you, because in that game I'm feeling for Kai Kamara, I'm feeling for Nico Mosqueda. I'm really, really excited for them, and then really, really, really sad for them. The sending off for the Colorado captain, it was just Ganter didn't like a word he said or something.
Yeah,
or
it looks like he swore at him, and he's just like, right, you're off.
Yeah.
See, I agree with you in terms of Gantar. I don't think my impression of him is he's not a referee who does really great at the man management of the game. And I think he had kind of like, at that point in the game, he had already lost control of the game, it felt like. And it felt like that was his attempt to kind of restamp his authority on the game. And I think it just made Colorado players even more angry. But yeah, I don't think he's I don't think he's a quality ref.
I just think in those games, in those 4-3 games, in the 3-2 KC Colorado game, that those are the moments where the sterility of the environment is most noticeable. Where it's just this weird kind of Twilight Zone situation where there's nobody there to react to this strange stuff that's going on, and it's just it makes for odd viewing. To be honest, I don't really know if I have any more to add to it than that.
Yeah, I mean, the LA Derby was a bit of a surprise as well, just because of the way, kind of in the way that the Galaxy defence just crumbled, but these are two teams that really, really need to relook at where they're allocating their money. It's fine having all this attacking talent. If you're not going to have a defence, it's like you're not going to win an MLS Cup. That's where Seattle's done so well over the years. They've had attacking strength, they've had exciting attackers, but they build their defence good as well.
Yeah, LAFC, the GOATs there, the Walker Zimmerman thing, obviously we talked about in the past, about selling him so close to the beginning of the season and not allowing yourself time to actually replace him. But then also in this tournament, they're missing someone else, or someone else is injured, right? Because another good friend, Canadian international Dejan Jakovic, is starting, and that's more than surprising. But I thought they had another
starter anyway, was he not there?
No.
A couple years ago.
Oh.
A couple years ago.
Yeah. But he doesn't have the pace to start anymore.
One thing I want to talk about looking forward, though, like how we should mention this about the West Germany Austria thing. The one group to look at that is group which one is it? Group E, where Columbus and Atlanta are playing on the Tuesday. Atlanta gets a win, and you got the next day Cincinnati and the Red Bulls on 3 points each, where they could play to a draw and knock Atlanta out of the tournament. I just wanted to mention that one because I didn't see it in the rundown, but that's the Tuesday Wednesday game. Those two games are really keeping an eye on.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's nuts how they're doing this. Last thing in this little bit, I said on Wednesday, Columbus have impressed me. They still have. Any other teams stand out for any of you guys?
I think Portland and LAFC are two teams that look good as well.
Portland looks great.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people talk about Philadelphia as well. I felt their opening
they've been
goal,
a bit of a surprise.
I keep picking them for MLS Cup final for the last 3-4 years. So maybe one time they'll actually do something. Orlando, obviously, they got the home, even though everybody's in the same bubble, still their home area. So I guess you got to put them up there too.
Talking actually about Portland, I thought this during the game. Like, I have really enjoyed listening to Gio Savarese on the touchline. And when Caleb Porter was with Portland, it was quite easy to hate Portland. They're rivals, but Caleb Porter, really easy to hate. Having Gio there, it's hard to dislike them because he's so likable.
They're gamers with him at the helm. I mean, man, they play hard. They're savvy. They're tactically very sharp. They can do a lot of different things. They can show you different looks. He experiments really well with different lineups and with different combinations and finds different things that work, different modes of play. And I think he's really one of the sharpest minds in Major League Soccer.
And I think that with Portland also, they probably got more motivation to stay in the tournament longer because of what's going on in Portland at this point.
Oh, yes.
So they want to stay there as long as possible so they don't have to come home.
So one last thing we're going to chat about tonight. This was a question that was posed on Twitter by Ryan Burns at AuthenticMe13. So we were chatting about a few things last night. And it surrounds the decision to not let the Toronto Blue Jays play any baseball games in Canada because of the border restrictions. So they're either going to have to bow out of the MLB season, which they're not going to do, or play all their games in the States, which Buffalo has offered to be their home. So if this doesn't change, obviously it's going to affect the 3 MLS teams. And for me right now, if things weren't to change, you've only got 3 options. You've got the fact that the 3 Canadian teams don't play another MLS game this year. The 3 Canadian teams play all their games in the States, which means they wouldn't even be able to come over the border because they'd have quarantine and stuff, so they'd be away from their family for months, potentially on end. Or the third option, there isn't games in the home market. Garber wants 20. What's that? Oh, actually, we've got Don Garber just coming on the show just now.
Oh, you're just waiting for that.
It's Don Garber. Hi. What's that, Don? Yeah,
I'm surprised it took this long.
He's telling me what his plan is for the season. Yet they haven't made their mind up yet. I'm not going to say that. That's rude. No, I agree. That's fair about Caleb Porter.
Doesn't Michael look like the Scottish Mr. Dress-Up anyways?
Anyway, Don's just told me that those are the 3 options, and the third one being there could be more tournaments. What's your thoughts on that?
Maybe a fourth option. Maybe they join the CPL for this season.
He's had no talks with the CPL just now.
Surprised you didn't play the clip of him saying that. Michael, you better be careful because you're almost hugging him. So just be careful. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting if they're not allowing the Blue Jays to play games at home. You can't see them allowing MLS teams to play unless something changes, and I don't think it's going to change quick enough for that to happen. So, I mean, when you talk about if you think about Vancouver, think about what's happened to their squad playing games in the States right now. If they're saying the whole 20 home games are happening, let's say in Seattle, or like the US, like the residency teams in Whatcom or whatever, Whatcom County. Like I don't see that going well or being received well by the Vancouver players.
At least they got good coffee.
Sure, but like
Freddie Montero can offer coffee. Yeah,
right. So maybe he would actually play then if it was in Washington State. But it doesn't feel like they're going to be able to get a meaningful season in.
I don't think they're going to be playing home games like the ones like baseball, for example. Use baseball. The players are socially distanced in baseball, where they're like far away. You can avoid that. Whereas like American football and I think soccer, I don't think those, because the players are so in close to each other. I think eventually you'll get a lot of testing like going on where more people will get COVID on the teams. Just look at FC Dallas and Nashville, for example. And I think those kind of sports will not work. Whereas sports like baseball, golf, NASCAR, for example, another one, those ones do work because people are apart from each other during the competition. I think that's the big difference there.
There is something ironic yet entirely self-consistent about Canada managing its outbreak of the coronavirus much more effectively than the United States, yet Canadian clubs being the ones who are going to be excluded from upcoming competition. So,
yeah. I genuinely think there'll be another tournament. I don't think there will be games in the home market. I think there'll be another tournament, maybe September, maybe October time. Their version of the Apertura Clausura kind of thing. I don't know how that's going to work, but I could see that happening. But going back to Ryan Burns' tweet, after we were discussing that, he said, my mind is more now on not will they play and how will they play this year, but more what does this expose about how football has operated, the weaknesses in that, and how to potentially be less of a house of cards and more a properly sustainable business, which, like or love it, is the reality now. And you have to say, if this continues, if there's second waves, if there's third waves, if fans aren't getting into the stadiums, or if fans aren't getting into the stadiums in full numbers, maybe not MLS, but not necessarily not MLS, but across North America, across Europe, there's going to be a lot of football teams in a lot of trouble, and it is because their business model relies so much on money.
You know, my simple answer to you, Michael, is that the unfortunate reality is that Major League Soccer owners possess far more greed than they do brains.
That kind of sums it up.
Oh, Don's left at that. He's disgusted by that comment. It's true. It's true. Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. It's football nowadays. It's a business. Like it or not, it's a business. It's very different over here to what I grew up with, where you've got community clubs. But even in the UK and Scotland, it's like a lot of the clubs are getting away from that. Like my team, East Fife, are getting more involved in their community. It's actually fantastic to see. They've penny pinched for years, but now their prudency has put them in a really good position, so they're not in the potential trouble that a lot of other clubs are. When you look over here, when I was doing conference calls at the start of all the coronavirus stuff, it was surprising to hear how many teams actually said that the bulk of their revenue comes from fans through the gate. And when you think about that, considering all the other money that's existing in expansion fees and stuff, that's very worrying if we don't know when fans are going to be back. Because USL started it, it's gone off, we think, without a hitch, but there's been some teams that aren't letting fans in at all. And there's been things with folk not wearing masks or not social distancing. But if this keeps up, the landscape of football in North America could be very, very different come 2022.
I think the teams that really rely on are the teams that own their own stadium. That's the ones that really rely on the ticket sales and the people coming in. Some teams, they're leasing out, and they're probably costing them more doing that as well. So it'll be interesting to see which teams get more affected. Is it the teams that spent more, or is it the teams that were very frugal? Are they the ones that would be okay after all this?
I mean, Stephen, from your knowledge, how much do the Sounders actually rely on gate receipts for their income? Because obviously they get fantastic crowds.
They're also always one of the top in terms of jersey sales and in terms of merchandising and all that as well. And they get huge sponsorships compared to what most MLS clubs are dealing with. But I think the point overall for the whole league, because there's so much revenue sharing going on anyways, right, is that MLS as a whole just fails consistently to look beyond the near-term payday, the short-term payday, to anything in the intermediate or long-term. And I think it probably comes from this hand-to-mouth mindset that the league grew up with in the 90s and early 2000s, but that just really doesn't make sense for where we're at financially now, you know?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, hopefully, we're not looking at the worst-case scenario. Things are going to get better. Just with how things look in the US just now, I can't see the Canadian border opening anytime soon, and I can't see restrictions lifted for teams, so that does put the Canadian teams in an awkward position. And you can't ask these teams to go and play a 20-game season down in the States. Even if you played 2 games a week, you're still getting them to go away from their family for maybe 3 months. That's just not acceptable. And if the players said no, I'd back that 100%.
Yeah, me too.
That's pretty much it then for the video part of tonight's show. Just a couple of last little messages from the chat. The Walker said prediction of 3-0 to the Whitecaps, and that the only team who appear true to form in this competition are actually the Whitecaps. Gordy says it's like watching the live streams of VMSL games, watching these games from Orlando. It is better quality, I'd have to say, in Orlando, but only just. So, just before we go into the part of the show where it's just me talking, let everyone know where they can find you online, starting with the luchador himself, Steve-O Pando.
Yeah, you can find me at Whitecaps Beat on Twitter.
For me, you can find me on Twitter at Zachary AM.
And Stephen?
You can check our podcast out at radio_Cascadia. Michael joins us frequently, which we're very, very grateful for. And I am grateful to have joined you guys tonight. Thank you so much.
Pleasure to have you, Stephen. We're going to have this out in the podcast, but there's also going to be another 2 parts in the podcast. In part 4, we're going to be talking sports science in this tournament. I got a chance to chat with Axel Schuster, Greg Vanney, Thierry Henry, Brian Schmetzer, and Peter Vermes about sports science in this tournament, how they've seen things change over the years, and a variety of things like that. Then in the last part of the show, we're going to look a little bit into like the permutations for the groups still to come in the MLS's back tournament, and we'll also have Wavelength and the final part of our episodic drama, Wanted for Wembley.
Hi, I'm Jake Nowinski, and you're listening to the AFTN Soccer Show.
Welcome back to the AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off part 4 is the second of tonight's 3-of-a-kind songs. That was The Adverts and Gary Gilmore's Eyes, a single released in 1977, reached number 18 in the UK charts. It was a standalone single, but you can find it on a number of punk compilations and also in the reissues of The Adverts' debut album, Crossing the Red Sea. And the story behind the song is a fascinating one. It's about the American murderer, Gary Gilmore, who became the first man to be executed once the US brought back the death penalty in 1977. He actually took the US government to court for the right to be executed, which was his original sentence before it had been commuted to life in prison. Died by firing squad in Utah, which just seems a particularly barbaric way to die, especially in the 70s and in the US, but there we go. And what inspired the song is that Gary Gilmore left a number of his organs to organ donors after his death, and both of his corneas were used as a transplant and went to other people, hence looking through Gary Gilmore's eyes. Must be weird getting a transplant, being all happy about that, then waking up and finding that it's actually from a murderer. But there we go. The second of tonight's 3-of-a-kind songs. We had English punk band there, the Adverts with Gary Gilmore's Eyes. And kicking off part 3, we had Canadian punk legends, SNFU, with Tears. Have you worked out what the link might be yet? And if you have, what do you think our third and final song will be to kick off part 5? Find out soon. But let's get back to some more football chat now. And in this part, I'm going to take a slight break from talking about the MLS is Back tournament. Well, it's still related to the tournament, it's just not about the matches. Because in this part, I want to look at a subject that has fascinated me for a long time in football, but particularly in this tournament, and that is sports science. It's thrown about a lot in football circles these days, and the definition, as given in Wikipedia, is sports science is a discipline that studies how the healthy human body works during exercise, and how sport and physical activity promote health and performance from cellular to whole body perspectives. So a lot of things to do with sports science is basically having a look at how players' bodies recover in certain environments, if they have certain sleep patterns, if they eat a certain way, if they eat certain things. Just a whole load of different factors are involved. It incorporates areas of physiology, anatomy, biomechanics, biochemistry, and biokinetics. Now, in recent years, more and more football teams have been putting a lot more stock into sports science, and for a tournament like MLS is Back in Orlando, it's certainly getting worked a lot as teams are struggling with the hot temperatures, the humidity, having to change their body clock from going from, say, evening games to morning games to back to evening games, and just everything that goes with that, and just trying to get your body in the best peak physical condition to take part in these matches. So this past week, I've spoken to a number of people across MLS just to see how much they are relying on sports science during this tournament and the role it can help to have their teams to play at the peak physical condition that they need. So I'm going to bring you those in this part. So let's kick things off from a Whitecaps perspective. I asked Axel Schuster about this on Tuesday during his Zoom media conference call. With all the changes to the Whitecaps schedule, they've gone from arriving in Orlando thinking they had 3 matches at 10:30 at night, planned their daily routine accordingly, planned their sleeping pattern, planned their eating pattern, planned their training pattern. Everything all geared to these 10:30pm kickoffs. But as we know, the best laid plans and the coronavirus kind of scuppered their chances of being able to do that. Their first game against Dallas was postponed as the Texans side were withdrawn from the tournament. Then their scheduled second game, which had become their first game against San Jose Earthquakes on Wednesday evening, was brought forward an hour and a half, clearly for television purposes, as it was the only game that was on that night, following the postponement of 24 hours of the Canadian derby between TFC and Montreal. I mean, that affected their kind of schedule a little bit, but not too much, because the game kicked off at 9pm Orlando time. They'd been doing their training sessions at 9:30pm Orlando time, so that wasn't a factor in their loss on Wednesday night. Neither were the conditions, as everyone was keen to point out. More just defensive breakdowns, but let's move on from that. We don't want to go over that game anymore. Their second game has stayed at the 10:30pm kickoff time locally, 7:30pm for us in Pacific that we saw on Sunday against the Sounders. But then a very quick turnaround. In 3 days' time, they've got to adjust their whole body clock to a 9am kickoff, 6am Pacific time, taking on Chicago in their last group game of the competition. And just everything that goes with that is a big change to the players' bodies and mental health and everything like that. So I asked Axel whether this tournament has kind of meant that he's had to rely more on sports science than in any other time of his career. So here's what he had to tell me.
Ooh, good question. No, not really. So yeah, maybe for most of our guys, yes. But if you play Champions League and you have to travel as well, and you play also under total different conditions. So you play in Turkey and it's very hot, and you come back and play in Germany where it's still cold, and you have a travel and the time. We played Moscow and Porto in Champions League in the same group stage. It was very different, and we had to travel, and you had an away game after the away game. So in a shorter term, the thing, we also had there are time changes. The thing is, it is at all a special situation, and the environment is very special, and you have to adapt to that. But I think all the problems we are dealing with are not new problems. So maybe the combination of all of that is special. But if we play, I only want to give you an impression. If we would play a league game against Orlando, and it would be the most important game in the season, it would decide about going to the playoffs or not. We would go here 2 days before. We have to adapt to the heat. We have to adapt to a time change. So it's something that's not totally new, and we would have to travel 2 days before the game. It's the combination of all of that, and that you stuck in this environment, and you are not flexible to do all what you want to do or would do with the tiny timings of trainings. But it becomes better every day. So at the moment where we got the new kickoff time for Wednesday, the league was very open to reschedule things in our daily schedule. So yeah, it's special, but I would not say that it is more special or more complicated than everything we did before. It's only everything in real time, very fast and together. But yeah, no excuses. No, for sure, no excuses. Because as I said, if we would play Orlando in the most important game, or Miami, we would go 2 days before, and we could not use that as an excuse then.
So Whitecaps sporting director and new CEO Axel Schuster, giving us a little bit of insight into the sports science side of things from a Whitecaps perspective. And interesting to hear him talk about that. All these kind of changes and time zones and different kind of temperatures and stuff, it is something he's come across before over in Europe with Champions League and Europa League stuff. But of course, a number of the players won't have had to go through anything like this at all. And I guess in some ways the Whitecaps have been quite lucky, because their matches, they've had 2 evening matches and they've just got the one change to make for the early morning match this coming Thursday against Chicago. Still not sure my body could adjust just in a couple of days, 4 days really, but technically you're really just looking at 3 days. I'm also not very much of a morning person, so anything at 9 a.m. is not going to be good. Trying to get up at 6 a.m. to watch the match is also equally not good. Keeping in Canada though, or with the Canadian teams, Montreal Impact have been fortunate with their schedule. It hasn't changed too much. They had their opener on July 9th in a game that kicked off at 8 p.m. Orlando time. There was a 1-0 loss to New England. Followed that up exactly a week later, so I mean they had a whole week's rest to kind of get used to things in between, with that barn-burning 4-3 loss to Toronto this past Thursday, another game that kicked off at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And they round off their group games on Tuesday with a match against DC United, a match they have to win, but they don't have to do too much adjusting to their body clock, routines or anything. I mean, that game is actually kicking off a little bit later. It's going to be kicking off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But I mean, it's certainly been evident that the heat, the humidity, the conditions are affecting a lot of teams more than other teams. I think the Canadian teams are at a big disadvantage during a tournament like this. And I got a chance to ask Thierry Henry just about how much he has been relying on sports science during this tournament, and also how much he's seen things change really from his playing days and over the last couple of years. So let's hear now from Montreal Impact head coach Thierry Henry. I'd like to just ask you a little bit about the sports science side of things. Now, obviously, everyone knows the conditions are quite bad, but is this the most you've had to rely on sports science as a coach in this tournament? And can you maybe talk a little bit about how different it is now to when you were actually playing the game?
Listen, that's a very good question. I never came across anything like that before in my life. I said it before, because you prepare for a tournament that's a competitive tournament. Teams arrive with different schedule. Teams arrive with different training, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Because, as we know, I'm not complaining, it's a fact, because of COVID-19. So to prepare is very difficult, because teams are 10 days ahead, some are 2 weeks behind. So it's very difficult. What do? You go straight into playing games? No, you cannot. You go straight into tactic. Usually you do that a bit later. You get those guys ready, then you get to the tactic a bit after. You do some pattern of play, you do whatever you do, but you can't go to the next level straight away. And that's what you had to do for this tournament while you're playing under what you know, humidity and stuff. So then you bring the mental aspect part of the game, where you are in a place where it's difficult to take your mind off anything, because you have to stay here. So all those little things, not only sports science, but being able to speak to the team and make sure that you keep them focused on what they need to be focused on without being ready physically, it's very difficult. So yes, sports science was a massive help. I didn't have sports science in my time, so it's very difficult to compare my time and now. But it was vital to have those guys, and still it's still difficult because of the reason that we talked about. But don't underestimate also the mental aspect of the game, because staying in the same place for so long, for such a long time, while you're tired, it is not that easy. Not that easy at all.
Thierry Henry there, talking to me about the sports science side of things and how it's been affecting and implemented by Montreal. Like I mentioned, they're one of the teams that's been really fortunate in having all their games in the evening, so they haven't had to adjust things very much at all. Certainly not the case for the third of the Canadian sides, Toronto FC. I mean, what tournament they've had so far, just with arriving late and then getting their game against DC United pushed back following positive tests, which then proved to be negative. They eventually got their tournament underway on Monday with that 2-2 draw with DC United, where they gave up 2 late goals, clearly flagged a little bit. That game kicked off at 9 a.m. Orlando time. Then they had to make a very quick adjustment. 3 days later, back on the pitch for an 8 p.m. evening kickoff against Montreal. Didn't really seem to show any side effects as they ran out 4-3 winners in that fantastic game, and certainly seemed to have a lot of energy and pep in their step. And then they also round off their tournament on Tuesday, but they've got a game again at 9 a.m. So you're going from a morning game to an early evening game to a morning game again, all in the space of 8-9 days. And frankly, it's ridiculous. They really needed to do something bit with the schedule in this. What that could be doing to a player, I mean, who knows? The good thing from TFC is they already look to be through. They've got their 4 points on the board. That should be enough to get them into the knockout stages. Clearly, though, you want to win as many points as possible, not just for this tournament, but to carry forward into what might lie ahead for a regular MLS season, or not, depending on what the case might be. But as with Axel Schuster and Thierry Henry, I put the question about sports science to Greg Vanney when I got a chance to be on a call with him on Friday afternoon. And here's what he had to say about this subject.
Well, I think we got a lot of experience in Champions League. It was a slightly different experience, but we learned a lot of lessons during the 2018 Champions League run, just on how sports science would play a role in all of this. It was, again, similar in that it was the beginning of a season. Players are still working themselves towards fitness. The variables were slightly different. We dealt with a lot of altitude then. Now we're dealing with a lot of heat and hydration issues, things like that. But it's something that we're definitely relying on in this stage. But the guys we have a lot of different tools to see where the guys are at. We have a lot of different tools that we're using to help guys recover, including vests that they can wear to bring the body temperature down. We're doing hydration checks. We're doing weight checks. We're doing a lot of things to follow up on the guys in terms of where they're at. We have a lot of different machines that we didn't even have a couple of years ago or even a year ago to help us to get through and to manage through this. So yes, it's something that we're heavily relying on and getting feedback from on a daily basis, really on a semi like half a day. Guys will come in for a check. They'll come in again in the afternoon for another check. So there's a lot of information on that side that's useful. But I do think our experience and everything that we went through the Champions League has really helped us to make that department more robust and to gain more information through that process.
So TFC head coach Greg Vanney there, giving some of his thoughts on sports science and how he's using it and implementing it at Toronto FC. I don't know if other folk are as interested in this subject as I am, so I don't want to ram too much of this down your throat, but I want to bring you the last two little bits of audio that I gathered this week just now around this subject. I think it's interesting to get the different thoughts and approaches of clubs around the league. So we're going to hear now from two of the Whitecaps' Western Conference rivals. We're going to hear first of all from Peter Vermes from Sporting Kansas City, and then also from Brian Schmetzer from Seattle Sounders. So I've just put both of these together, and here's their thoughts on sports science and its use in this tournament and just in general. Obviously, teams are playing at different times. Your third game is going to be a morning kickoff from early evening. Can you just talk a little bit about how much you're having to rely on that side of things and maybe just how you've seen that change in the game over the last few years?
Well, there's a principle. It's called SAID. It's an acronym, SAID. It stands for Specific Adaptations to Impose Demands. And basically, the definition or the example of that would be is that if you're going to play, in really, really hot weather, humid weather, you need to train in really hot, humid weather. Fortunately, before we left, Kansas City wasn't. There were some days where it was really hot and it was humid, but then there were a lot of other days where it was overcast for a week, 10 days, and it was cooler out. And so that had a big effect, I think, for us. I said from the get-go, teams like Houston, if Dallas was still here, the two, Orlando and Miami, Atlanta, those teams would have they'd have an ability that was different than I think a lot of the other teams. I even think the two LA teams, because it can get really hot. Now it's not the same heat. It's not humid. It's a little more dry. That would have a big effect with different teams playing in the games. We obviously have to look at a lot of different things, but also, to your point, we're playing two games at 8 p.m., one at 9 a.m., where the difference is that it's not like all of a sudden you can start training, at 9 a.m. and then train at 8 p.m. because the guy's clock's going to be all over the place. So we chose to kind of stay with our normal training time. We're actually training a little bit earlier than our normal training time. And the only reason being is because you kind of pick your poison. So we usually train around 8 o'clock in the morning. Normally we train at 10, where the issue is if you train at the 10:30 time slot, a lot of times what happens is the thunderstorms here in Florida roll in. And so now your training session gets interrupted. And so which one do you want? Which inconvenience do you want? And so it's still been very hot at 8 o'clock. So I think we're still getting the kind of weather that we need. But also our sessions aren't being interrupted. And, I wouldn't say just for this tournament, but I would say for a long time now, we've used, the data as a real, we use it as information to make good decisions in regards to our players. And I think every team uses it pretty well and does a pretty good job with it. The thing that's always very difficult to measure, and you can't measure it with the physical data, is where the guys are mentally. Because it's a different world down here. It's surrealistic in so many ways, right? Where it's all just soccer teams in a hotel. We go basically, only time we can leave is we get on a bus and we go to the training field and we come back. Everywhere you are, you're a mask. Just yesterday was first time in probably like 7 days that we kind of ate together again, a meal. because normally we would go in and just grab our meal and go back to your room. So, it's kind of interesting. This is an individual sport like tennis or golf. This is a team sport. And these guys have been around the team for, the majority of their life. It's kind of that camaraderie. It's that interaction that you have. And, we've missed that, ever since the moratorium came in back in March. And we started to get it back again when we were in Kansas City, went to full team training. And now we're back to this, you're individual. And, there's times where you spend 20 hours in your room a day. That's not easy, I gotta tell you. So I know I actually said a lot of other things in there, but it's not an easy one.
How much have you had to rely on it in this tournament as opposed to like normal matches? And how have you seen that change in how you deal with games over the last couple of seasons?
Well, I don't think it changes because, look, there's midweek games in MLS. So, when our game got changed to Chicago, the Chicago game was a day earlier. We played at 9 o'clock at night, then 9 in the morning. It shortened it even by another 12 hours. I mean, that's when your sports science department really kicks in. I mean, that's just normal. If we played on a Saturday, Wednesday, it's basically the same. It's the same program. You're focused on just the physical recovery first. You might get a little bit of walkthrough tactics, something on a Tuesday prior to your Wednesday match. So coaches just can't coach as much. You have to do the work in the classroom with film and other vehicles to give them the instruction that you want. It's just not always out on the field because the stuff that they do on the field is just all recovery work.
So the thoughts of KC head coach Peter Vermes and Sounders head coach Brian Schmetzer there around sports science. You'll probably be glad to know that that's my final bits of audio to do with sports science from this episode. Hopefully you found it as fascinating as I had asking the questions this week. If it is something you'd like to know more about or like us to delve into a little bit more, let me know, because I wouldn't mind sitting down with some of the people connected with the Whitecaps. They've got a number of different people. You've got John Pawley, who's the head of physical preparation, but then they also have a head physiotherapist, a head of performance data science, applied performance scientists. So there's a lot of work goes into that aspect of it at the club. And if you want, we can do some more chats about this and delve into exactly how the Whitecaps do and what they do with the data and what they collect and stuff like that. But before we get back to chatting about the MLS's back tournament, we're going to round off this part with this week's wavelength. I was disgusted with myself last week because in my rush to try and get out a timely show, which I had to re-record several times in the process, I neglected to put in a wavelength. I don't know, it's unforgivable, but we'll make up for it this week. And we've got a special tune to celebrate a special moment this weekend. Leeds United. I've mentioned this on the show before. They're a team, I don't know why, I just don't like them. But even me, I have to admit and doff my cap to say well done to Marcelo Bielsa and his Leeds United team. They were the class team all season long, basically, in the championship. After a couple of close calls, near misses, they finally not only secured their place back in the Premier League after a 16-year absence, they are also championship champions for the 2019-20 season. And it has been very well deserved. They've played some fantastic football under Bielsa this year. So this week's wavelength is to pay tribute to Marcelo Bielsa. It's a man, a coach that Mark DeSantis has talked to us before about how much he admires him. It's going to be good fun, I think, watching him coach in the Premier League next year. So to celebrate all of this, we're going to bring you a song from 2019 by singer-songwriter Paul Wilson. It's all about Bielsa and it's called The King of Elland Road.
From Argentina to West Yorkshire comes the mad
to end our years of torture. From the darkness we're rising to our feet. Well, Leeds United, England's elite. Marcelo, El Loco of the league. Here we go, with your bucket as your throne. You're the king of Ellen Road. Champions of Europe, Billy Bremner. Blue, white and yellow, starting to remember. Are the good times coming back to Leeds? With Piette, United fans believe. Marcelo, El Loco of the league. Here we go, with your bucket as your throne. You're the king of Ellen Road. The time is now, time to march on up together. Be us the boys, taking leads to lands far away. The greatest team the world has seen will follow you. We'll sing for you, on and away, and away. Marcelo, El Loco of the league. Here we go, with your bucket as your throne. You're the king of Ellen Road. Marcelo, El Loco of the league. Here we go, with your bucket as your throne. You're the king of Ellen Road. Marcelo, El Loco of the league. Here we go, with your bucket as your throne. You're the king of Ellen Road. Na na na, na na na, na na na, na na na. With your bucket as your throne. You're the king of Ellen Road. You're the king of Ellen Road. You're the king of Ellen Road.
Paul Wilson there with his 2019 song The King of Elland Road. You can find that on YouTube, you can find it on Amazon and other places where you can buy MP3s if you so wish. But as I said, my grudging congratulations to Leeds United, champions for this season. Who's going to be champions of the MLS's back tournament? Still a long way for that to go. The group games wrap up this week. Then we get into the knockout phase, which should be pretty exciting. And we're going to look a little bit more into what is coming up this week ahead in the next part. And we'll be back with that. And also the final part of our episodic drama serial, Wanted for Wembley, right after this.
Hi, I'm Ryan Raposo, and you're listening to the AFTN Show.
God, I could murder a Cadbury's flake, but then I guess you wouldn't let me into heaven. Or maybe you would, cause their adverts promote oral sex. A Romany bint in a field with her paints, suggesting we fainted her beauty. But she's got Dickie Davis eyes. And all those people who you romantically like to still believe are alive or dead. So I'll wipe my snot on the arm of your chair as you put another Roger Dean poster on the wall. And all those people who you romantically like to still believe are alive or dead. So I'll wipe my snot on the arm of your chair as you put another Roger Dean poster on the wall.
Welcome back to the final part of tonight's AFTN Soccer Show on CITR Radio 101.9 FM. And kicking off this part was also the final song in tonight's Three of a Kind. The wonderful Half Man Half Biscuit with Dickie Davies Eyes. Released as a single in 1986, it reached number 86 in the main UK singles charts, and it reached number 1 in the UK indie charts. You can also find it on the band's second album, Back Again in the DHSS, released in 1987. And the song is a homage, piss take, whatever you want to call it, of Kim Carnes' early 80s classic, Betty Davies' Eyes. Dickie Davies, for anyone that doesn't know, was a UK television presenter, presented a lot of sports programmes back in the day. Perhaps best known for having a weird little white patch in his hair. Certainly a staple of my Saturday afternoon sports viewing before I headed along to watching matches on my own, and an icon in television broadcasting. But we didn't play it solely for telling you that story. Although another fun story about that song, in a part which I didn't include there, it's in like the early part of the song, and there's a line in the song about the legendary commentator Brian Moore, which goes, Brian Moore's head looks uncannily like London Planetarium, and that line actually gave the name to a Gillingham FC fanzine back in the day. Fanzine which ourselves at AFTN swapped a few issues with over the years. And it's just one of those cult fanzines from back when football culture was very, very different. But enough of me waffling on about that. I'm sure you all want to know, if you haven't guessed already, what the link is with this week's Three of a Kind. Well, we kicked off part 3 with Canadian punk legends SNFU and a song called Tears, taken from their album Better Than a Stick in the Eye. Kicking off part 4, we had the Adverts with Gary Gilmore's Eyes, and kicking off this final part, it was Half Man, Half Biscuit with Dickie Davies' Eyes. The link, fairly easy I think this week. It was Eyes. You had the Tears coming from Eyes and talking about watery eyes and that SNFU song, also from an album with Eye in the title, and then 2 more tracks with Eyes in the title. Did you get this week's link? Hopefully you did. And whether you did or not, we'll be back with another Three of a Kind in next week's show. Now, we recorded the first 4 parts of this episode on Sunday, July 19th. I wanted to wait until Monday to record this part, just to keep it fresher and have all the up-to-date news. And we'll delve into what lies ahead this week in the remaining group games of MLS is back very shortly. But before that, I do want to play a bit of audio that I didn't get a chance to listen to until Monday morning. Someone sent me a message saying you really need to listen to Brian Schmetzer's press conference after the Whitecaps game. And boy, you certainly do. Second question of the press conference was from Jeremiah Oshan from SB Nation, and it did not go down well with Schmetzer. Let's just play that for you now.
Hey, Brian, someone suggested that it looked like you guys might not really want to be here based on the first 2 performances. What do you think this match looked like?
Who said that?
I'm not quite sure who actually said that.
Are you trying to get me upset, Jeremiah? We just won a good game. Team played well. I mean, we always try and win every single freaking game that we play. The first game, I thought we played okay. San Jose is a tough team. You saw them tonight. Chicago might have, fell flat. Hot. Possess the ball too much. Some giveaways. Tonight, Vancouver was depleted. Felt bad for Mark in some instances. And, tonight things came together for us and we won a game. It has nothing to do whether we want to stay here or not, whether we want to come home or not. It's every single game of this club we want to win. Simple as that. End of story. Next question.
So a very pissed off Brian Schmetzer there. And for the remainder of the press conference, which was about another 6 minutes, he was very terse, very prickly, gave really short answers to most of the questions. And I can't blame him, really. It's a bit of a stupid question to have asked, especially when you can't back up by saying who it was that was talking about it to begin with. I mean, any coach whether it is true that they didn't want to be down in Orlando or not, is not going to sit there and admit that that was the case. Anyway, the first part of the tournament has only a few more days to go. There's 4 more days of group games, including today, Monday. And there was a very important game took place on Monday morning that could impact what happens with the Whitecaps in this tournament. That was one of the main reasons that I wanted to wait and record this bit. It was the game between Inter Miami and New York City FC. Pretty boring game. Anyone that got up early to watch that one, I'm pretty sure they fell back asleep again pretty quickly. 1-0 win in the end to New York City FC. Moved them to 3rd place in the group standings on 3 points and a goal difference of -2. What that means for the Whitecaps is if they were to beat Chicago by the minimum amount needed, which is 2 goals, it would move them to 3 points and a goal difference of -2. But they would have the tiebreaker on New York City FC for having scored more goals. So if they get the first part of their job done, beating Chicago by that minimum amount, more than 2 would be even better, then that's one of the teams that could possibly take their playoff berth out of the equation altogether. So they just need to be better than one more team in that case to advance to the knockout round. How doable is that? Well, let's dig into some of that just now. In Group C, the placings are very much up for grabs. TFC and New England both have 4 points from the first 2 games and they meet on Tuesday. And the 3rd and 4th place teams, DC and Montreal, also meet on Tuesday. Right now, DC have 2 points and a 0 goal difference. Montreal, no points and a -2 goal difference. So let's just say Montreal won by a single goal in that game. That would move them into 3rd place on 3 points, but give them a goal difference of -1, meaning the Whitecaps would need to score 3 or more goals against Chicago to jump them in the best 3rd place team standings. A taller order for sure than just getting the 2-goal victory that they're already looking for. Also, after the first 2 games, it feels like it might be a tall order for Montreal. DC, unbeaten in the tournament, have drawn both their games. Montreal improved from Game 1 to Game 2. And I got a chance to speak to Samuel Piette on Sunday in the pre-game presser that they had. So I asked him what he feels Montreal has learned from those 2 first matches as a team, both in terms of this tournament and what they can then take forward into whatever happens in the remainder of the MLS season. So here's what Samuel had to tell me.
I think what we've learned, and that's something we were doing, before the pandemic, is we were a team that was fighting and, we were on the front foot and we wanted to, control the game. And I think against New England, we didn't do that. I think we were a bit, too low in our zone. We were not, pressing the opponent. We were not, looking to win the ball back. We were just waiting for things to happen, basically. And I think against Toronto, we corrected that and we had more success. So going forward, into the last game and going forward in the season or the next year, we want to be a team that imposes, the rhythm. We want to be a team that's on the front foot, aggressive with a lot of intensity in everything we do. So I think that's what we've learned in the last 2 games.
So Samuel Piette there, and definitely Montreal had improved from Game 1 to Game 2. That wouldn't be hard because they didn't really show much fight or spirit really in that first game against New England. They certainly did show it against TFC. What will happen in the game against DC? Well, we'll find that out on Tuesday. That game gets underway at 7:30 PM Pacific time, so a great time to watch that one. Looking forward to it, actually. And it doesn't look like the Whitecaps will jump whichever team finishes 3rd in that group. I think it's probably unlikely that they will also jump above whoever finishes 3rd in Group D. Right now, RSL and Minnesota have 4 points, KC have 3, Colorado have 0 and a goal difference of -3, whereas KC's goal difference is 0. Now KC play RSL on Wednesday. A KC win, and the top 3 all finish with more points than the Whitecaps. An RSL win could get interesting because it could send KC's goal difference down. If they lose by 2 or more goals, then again, If the Whitecaps were to win by 2, they would be better than KC in terms of goals scored during the tournament, in all probability anyway. Colorado Rapids. Now, if they were to beat Minnesota by 2 or more goals, then again the Whitecaps would have to score 3 or more to be better than them in the third place standings. So it's possible that things will work out for the Whitecaps in that group, but I'm not too sure. I definitely, though, would have eyes on what's happening in Group E and Group F. Right now in Group E, Columbus Crew through to the knockout round. New York Red Bulls are second on 3 points, Cincinnati are third on 3 points, and Atlanta are last on 0 points. Red Bulls and Cincinnati meet on Wednesday. Have to fancy the Red Bulls for that one. That would take them out of sight of the Whitecaps, and would certainly put Cincinnati as a team that the Whitecaps could overtake in third if they get that 2-goal victory or more. The only spanner in the works with this one is Atlanta taking on Columbus on Tuesday. Now, Atlanta's fighting for their lives. Now, if Atlanta were to win that one, unlikely I think that the Whitecaps would overtake them in the third place standings, bar a 3 or more goal victory. So keep an eye on that. And in Group F, you've got the third and the fourth place teams battling it out for third. Houston taking on the LA Galaxy. The way that things have gone so far, I wouldn't be surprised if we got a draw on that one. A Galaxy win by anything but a big margin would allow the Whitecaps to overtake them if they get their 2 or more goal victory. Houston win, then the Whitecaps can't catch them. A draw suits the Whitecaps as well. That game, though, takes place after the Whitecaps have taken on Chicago, so that could be very interesting. If it all came down to that, and the teams knew exactly what they had to do going into it, then that could be a very interesting game to watch for Whitecaps fans. Is all of this a flight of fancy? Do the Whitecaps have any chance at all? Well, although it might not feel like they do, it's a 2-stage process. They have to get past Chicago, they have to get past them by at least 2 goals, and I'm calling it right now. If they do that part of it, I think they will get through to the knockout round. That, of course, is a big if. They really have to work on where the goals are coming from, and they really have to tighten up that defence. Very, very much tighten up that defence. But it's going to make for an exciting 4 days of action in the group stages anyway. Really looking forward to it. The only concern I kind of have now during all of this is, are the pitches going to hold up till the end of the tournament? They're starting to look a little bit threadbare. There are 3 pitches that can be used for the tournament. Primarily, they're only using the one just now. It's starting to get a little bit worse for wear. Is there concern over that? I asked KC head coach Peter Vermes that. He doesn't think so, but here's what he did have to say.
I hope so. I know they have 3 of them. They have 3 fields that they've put out for games, and so we've been playing on really the one. So I think they're going to eventually switch. I think, and then you'll play another one and let that kind of recover, and then you go to another one and let that the other one recover. And so I'm hoping that's what it's going to be. But they've been good so far. I haven't experienced it being poor at the moment. So, I've been here many times, and I know what kind of traffic these fields get. So, I think that part will be okay. My impressions are that it's been really interesting in a lot of ways. It's just funny because everybody's, I think, managing it very similarly, all the teams, whether it's training games, what have you, and everybody's just trying to put their best foot forward.
So Peter Vermes there, not concerned about the pitches kind of breaking up anymore because they do get a lot of use all year round. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how the next couple of days play out in the tournament. We'll chat about all of that in next Sunday's show. There's no football action to take in at all on Friday before the knockout round gets underway on Saturday. Now, no matter what, the Whitecaps would not be in action on Saturday, but they could be in action in one of the 2 Sunday games where they might end up taking on the Group C winner or the Group D winner if they were to advance. As things are looking just now, I think I would probably prefer Group D, but even with that, you feel it's a tall order. But if the Whitecaps did manage to pull this out of the bag, did get through to the knockout rounds, for me, That's a giant success, all things considered. Anything after that, it's just the icing on the cake. And you know me, I love my cake. Well, that is pretty much it for this week's AFTN Soccer Show, but we can't go and leave you in the lurch without bringing you the final part of our episodic drama serial taken from the pages of the 1958 Roy of the Rovers album. Here is the fourth and final part of Wanted for Wembley. Milton Rangers had reached their first ever FA Cup final. Standing in their way to glory were the experienced Hardwick City. But any cup final dreams had turned into a nightmare, and they trailed 2-0 at half-time. The big difference seemed to be Milton Rangers star striker Jack Rush was forced to play in a new pair of football boots after they were mistakenly packed away instead of his old, trusty, faithful ones he had worn for a number of years. Those football boots seemed to be a good luck charm, and without them, Jack Rush was not playing well. The reason the boots were missing was down to kitman and apprentice footballer Robbie Rennick. Young Robbie had packed away the new boots and taken the old pair home, thinking that the old and tattered boots were going to be thrown out and no longer useful to Jack Rush. That couldn't, of course, be further from the truth. And when a radio broadcast revealed exactly how important these boots were to Jack Rush, Robbie Rennick faced a race against time to get the boots to Wembley Stadium to try and turn around Milton Rangers Cup final. He'd managed to get there in the first half, but no one would let him into the stadium. Eventually finding a way in, he made his way into the Milton Rangers locker room, handed the boots to Jack Rush, and everyone now just hoped for a miracle in the second half. Can Milton do it? Can they turn around the 2-goal deficit? Will this be the difference to turning Jack Rush from zero to hero? Find out in our thrilling final instalment of Wanted for Wembley by Harry Clements. You'd better come with me, lad. You can sit on the touchline bench with the trainer and me, said Milton manager Walter Jarvis. The rest was like a dream to Robbie. Keeping close to the manager, he passed along the tunnel and climbed up the long incline onto the pitch. For a moment he paused, catching his breath as he stared out over the great historic arena where the teams were moving into position for the start of the second half. Hardly had Robbie squatted on the bench in front of one of the large Wembley stands than Hardwick went away at a cracking pace. Bouncing with confidence, 2 goals up, they felt that the cup was almost theirs. But they were in for a shock. The second half was destined to be one of the most memorable ever seen on the famous turf. Hardwick made the early mistake of almost ignoring Jack Rush. His failure to bring off anything in the first half had betrayed them into thinking he was not a danger. It was a fatal mistake. A few minutes after the restart, Jack Rush burst into action. His speed took him past the opposing centre half. With dazzling ball control, he swerved to avoid first one tackle and then another. Robbie watched the centre-forward's twinkling feet in breathless excitement. Jack Rush was a new man. The change of boots had brought about a transformation. This was the real Jack Rush, deft, speedy and supremely confident. The Hardwick goalie was caught off his guard. Unprepared for Jack Rush's sudden burst, he hesitated, uncertain whether to stay on the line or come out. Then he started, and the instant he moved, Jack Rush shot. The goalie hurled himself sideways, but Jack Rush had aimed the ball wide of his outflung hands. It sizzled past him and into the net. The whole stadium went mad. Or at least the Milton Rangers half. Robbie was jumping up and down in a dance of wild excitement. Even the manager leapt from his seat. Something close to panic swept through Hardwick as they kicked off again. They were scared to open up the game and launch an attack for fear that it would give the Rangers a chance to equalise. They pulled back and packed their own half, determined to hang on to the 1-goal lead with which they still held. The Rangers went for them. Jack Rush became a darting, weaving, bewildering menace. Every time he put a foot on the ball, the opposition was in a frenzy. Every move he made had the touch of the master craftsman. Milton constantly fed Jack Rush, and the Hardwick goalie was just as constantly on the move between the posts, with shots thundering at him from all angles. He made save after save, leaping to catch the ball, flinging himself at it, beating it down, punching it out, banging it over the bar or round the post for corner after corner. For 15 minutes he survived the furious bombardment. Then, from yet another corner, Jack Rush leaped to get his head to the ball and brilliantly nodded it down just inside the post. The fans yelled their lungs out. Milton's scarves and hats were hurled into the air, while the Hardwick supporters looked stunned. With the scores now level at 2 apiece, Milton kept up their pressure, determined to snatch the lead. But by desperate tackling and several slices of luck, Hardwick held out until Milton's forwards, having almost run their legs off, began to flag. It was Hardwick's chance to hit back. Now it was the tiring Rangers who were under bombardment and in trouble. A sizzling shot that just grazed the crossbar with the goalie beaten made the supporters gasp and hold their breath. Almost immediately afterwards, another flashing shot thudded off the upright and was scrambled away. The minutes were flying past. Any moment now, the final whistle would blow. Then came the biggest moments of the match, ever to be remembered by all those who saw it. The Rangers' goal was being hammered. A high-booted clearance dropped towards the centre circle where Jack Rush was standing. He trapped it and was away like a cyclone. He was tackled and sidestepped out of the way. Keeping the ball close to his toes, Jack Rush raced down the field. The Hardwick left-back, a burly giant, came forward to tackle him. Jack kept him guessing for a few seconds. Then, with the ball under perfect control, Jack passed the back and dashed into the penalty area. The spectators were wild with excitement, and then a tremendous roar went up as Jack shot. Robbie watched with bated breath. The ball sped low towards the corner of the goal, but the Hardwick goalie was first class. Flinging himself sideways, he grabbed the ball and with a single-handed throw cleared to a back who kicked the ball well upfield. Robbie groaned with dismay. Just at that moment, he had seen the referee glancing at his watch. It was just a matter of minutes to full time. The Rangers had got to score and fast. For a few seconds, things looked bad for Milton. The Hardwick forwards carried the ball right into their opponent's penalty area, and an all-out battle started in front of the Rangers' goalmouth. But the Hardwick players were given no time to shoot, and Rangers' centre-half took possession of the ball with a brilliant tackle, passing the ball out to the wing. The Rangers' right winger snapped up the ball and sent across a quick pass to Jack Rush, and Jack again was off like a shot. The Hardwick centre-half blocked his path, but with a flick of his boot, Jack passed him and raced on down the pitch. 2 men closed in on him, and he went between them like a thunderbolt. Out came the goalie, diving recklessly at his feet. Jack hooked the ball out of the reach of his clutching fingers and walloped it over him and into the back of the net. It was the winning goal. Milton had done it. Go Milton! Milton! Good old Jack. He deserves a medal. A deafening roar went up from the crowd, packed like sardines into the gigantic stadium. No sooner had they kicked off again than the whistle blew. It was all over. Milton had staged a fantastic comeback, all thanks to hat-trick hero Jack Rush and his trusty old pair of boots. When the cup and the medals had been presented, Robbie found himself back in the dressing room with the hilarious and victorious team. For a time, no one took any notice of Robbie. Everybody was too busy congratulating the players. But suddenly, Jack Rush let out a shout and tore himself free of his teammates. "Wait, everybody!" he cried. "Let's not forget Robbie. If he hadn't brought my old boots, we'd never have won the cup. Come on, Robbie, up on the table where everyone can see you. 3 cheers for Robbie! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray!" And as Robbie was hoisted up into full view of everyone in the crowded Wembley dressing room, he knew that no matter how far he might progress in his own football career, he would never have a prouder moment than this. Well done, Robbie Rennick. Well done, Jack Rush. And well done, Milton Rangers. We will be back with another episodic drama serial in the coming weeks. Just trying to decide what one I want to do next. If you've enjoyed these though, let me know. If you find them boring, also let me know. Always keen to get some feedback on these weird and wacky segments that we do. But that is it for this week's AFTN Soccer Show now. Thank you as always for listening. I've been Michael McCall. You can find me on Twitter at AFTN Canada. Give us a follow on Instagram at AFTN Soccer. And perhaps most importantly, make sure you subscribe and like and turn on notifications to AFTN's YouTube channel. So it's youtube.com/AFTN Canada. That way you will be kept up to date with any of these live post-game shows that we're doing. We've been enjoying the couple that we've done so far. So we hopefully will do a few more of these over the course of the year. Also got some videos which I'll be uploading this week, just from some of the chats I've had around the league during this tournament. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And of course, as I mentioned, the best way to find out when we've got anything is to subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, if you do enjoy this show, it'd be good if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, on iTunes. That would also be very useful to the show. But I'll bid my farewell now. Thanks as always for listening. Have a good week. Take care. And mon the Caps.
Going to your first match is an experience you never forget. The atmosphere of what's going on around the pitch looks beautiful, and you always look and go, wow, I'd love to play here one day. If you get the bug, it's going to stay with you for life.
10 minutes left. Yeah, but there's still some time. It's not the final score. We need more than the numbers we're given. Show us you live and breathe the game. You're more than a name. That's what we came for. We can bring you more than the score. Every story. Let's take this thing off of the field into the real world, away from the numbers, away from the numbers.